Filecoin Foundation and what we're up to. And we're really excited to be part of the Filecoin Plus program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Megan. This is such a pleasure to meet all of you guys, and we are so thrilled to be here and also to work with our partners at Protocol Labs on this incredible event. So first off, I just wanted to spend the first few minutes talking about what is the Filecoin Foundation. You guys may have seen us on Twitter or elsewhere or our blog posts, but we were created to really be the independent organization dedicated to developing Filecoin and related technologies. And we help coordinate and support the creation of open protocols and open source software that allow for decentralized data storage and also retrieval networks. And so we're really similar to other foundations, as you may have seen, Ethereum Foundation, or a hybrid between Apache and the Mozilla Foundation. So there's a lot that we do. We also have a charitable arm called the Filecoin Foundation for the decentralized web, and that particular organization helps ensure that we can really support incredible projects that preserve humanity's most important information, which is a huge mission of Filecoin. So with that, I wanted to cover who's on our team. We are a relatively young startup, but we are hiring a lot right now. And so Megan and myself are founding officers. And then we also have Rachel Horn, who's also on this call, our head of marketing communications, Sonia, who you'll hear about from later. And then Dudley Grant, our security program manager. And Dudley and Sonia just started last week. Every month we're adding close to 3 to 5 jobs on our job board. So if you're excited to work for a really young but also fast-moving team, we would love to hear from you and get involved in some way. Every quarter, we also give developer grants. Some of you guys may have received some, and so some of you guys may have heard of our grants, but definitely, there's an incredible opportunity to get involved in a part-time or even full-time role. We are also so thrilled to have an incredible board that works with us. So Marcia Hoffman, who's an electronic privacy attorney, Marta Balcher, who's also general counsel at Protocol Labs. We have Rainey Brightman, who's an activist. We have Nicole Wong, who is the former deputy chief CTO of the US. Brian Benedorf, who's currently the executive director of Hyperledger, and also Kristen Smith, who's the executive director of the Blockchain Association. And then we also have an incredible set of advisors that help guide and plug us into incredible opportunities and partnerships. So these include Sheila Warren, who's the head of blockchain and data policy at the World Economic Forum, Sandra Rowe from the Blockchain Business Council. We have Danny O'Brien, who's an incredible activist in the Web3 space, Katie Bieber, who's the chief legal officer at Brex, Alex Fierce from Numeration Labs, Georgia Quinn, who's the GC at Anchorage. We have Brewster Kale, who's the founder of Internet Archive, who recently just gave incredible donation to really support their cause there. Joe Lubin, some of you guys may know, who's the founder of Consensus and the co-founder of Ethereum. And then we also have Wendy, who's the director of partnerships at Internet Archive. And so with that, just wanted to give a quick overview of who we are. You can find information about us at file.org, fil.org. But just wanted to give that introduction. And Filecoin Plus is definitely a program that we are very, very supportive of. We think it's so important to have data integrity as we're thinking about distributed storage. So thank you so much, everyone. I'll turn it back to my co-founder, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Clara. And super excited to have you here as Filecoin Plus Day. Well, just a little bit about what we're trying to do today. So what we want to do is we want to get a bunch of people from the Filecoin Plus program and wider community all together to, clearly tell my alarm's going off. This is pretty early for me. But we wanted to get a bunch of people from the wider Filecoin Plus community to kind of highlight and showcase all the good work that the community's been doing to tell people about this, really incredible program that, is one of the fundamental principles that is going to make the Filecoin network as useful and capable as it can be. And then also to help people who want to get involved, somebody who might want to be a notary, clients who want to apply for data cap, give them the information about how to do this, kind of demystify a bunch of it. And we're going to, end Filecoin Plus Day with a notary governance call. So people who maybe have not been part of that before can see how that works. We're really excited to have everyone who's attending today and everyone who's going to watch this on YouTube later here as part of the program. I'm having a little slide share issue today. So my talk about Filecoin Plus and the things that you need to know, you are not going to get my slides. Instead, you're just going to get my lovely face. But I think that I can talk us through the basics of Filecoin Plus and what we need to know about it, where the program came from, what we're trying to accomplish with it, and all of that jazz. So really, I think to understand the Filecoin Plus program, we're going to start with talking about what is like the mission of Filecoin. What are we trying to do here? And at the core, we want to create a system that preserves humanity's most important knowledge. We want to have economic incentives that are aligning us with that goal. And so, there's infinite layers that we can get into with the technical of how the Filecoin network works. But at the end of the day, the miners on our network are going to be rewarded when they are committing capacity to the network. And then also when they're making storage deals. These are both, behaviors that we want to promote. These are both behaviors that are then expanding and growing the network. But if you dig in a little bit more to storage deals, really you can talk about storage deals as two types of deals. There's real deals where people are taking data that they want to store and creating a deal with a miner and storing that data. But then there's also what we're going to characterize as malicious deals. So because anytime you are either committing capacity to the network or committing capacity through a storage deal, you are receiving block rewards as a miner. There's going to be an incentive to instead of taking a real deal to store junk data. Like, why would this be advantageous? Because real deals are always going to end up being somewhat more expensive than just putting junk data in there. Both because you have the actual cost of transferring the data, and the possibility that you might have a completely reasonable, loss of power, loss of something that makes you lose the data. So those like rare times that you're factoring into your cost benefits that you are actually losing the data, even though you're trying to store it correctly. And also just the opportunity cost. Anytime you are taking a not real deal, you can axe that deal out if a better opportunity comes along. If the cost of storage goes way up and there's client data that you want to take later on. So aside from the costs that apply to both ceiling sectors, there's always going to be an economic advantage to doing these malicious deals. And unfortunately, if we have a network filled with malicious deals, then we're not really working towards our mission to store humanity's most important knowledge, and we're not really building a useful storage network. So what do we do if we have an economic incentive that works against the goals of the program? We, ideally would go through and figure out a way to only store good data. But then this brings us into the question of what is good data? How could we figure out what data is good and real versus what data is, like not useful to anyone? And kind of like a bigger, more existential question, is that really our role? Like, whose role is it to decide if your data is actually like useful and good, and working towards our sort of like larger goals of storing humanity's most important data and making a storage network that is really useful. And so looking at the data isn't really the right way to go. A better solution is going to be to look at the client, not at the data. And so working off the Nobel Prize winning work of social scientists, we're able to think about ways to solve this, not by looking at the data, but by finding ways to verify the clients. Now, a bunch of these same questions still come up. Whose job is it to verify the clients? Who's going to say, yes, this is a real person who's really storing, useful and good data, versus this is somebody who has malicious intent. And like everything else that we're trying to build with the Filecoin network, this is something that should be entirely community driven. So what we've created, a system, but it's really up to the larger Filecoin community to come in and say who are, the clients that should be verified and who are the clients who, who are people who look like this is a scam. And so, we offer higher block rewards to clients that have been verified through this community governance structure. Deep is going to do a deep dive into community governance structure in just a moment. But that is the basic idea of what we're trying to accomplish with the Filecoin Plus program. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Megan, for the overview. I'm going to just briefly take over the screen sharing here and move into the next section for the talk today. Let's see if I can get this right. Nice. Okay, sweet. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so before we get started with this, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. Like, we've got a lot of folks both in the Zoom as well as on YouTube. If you've got any questions about the content that's being covered or being discussed, please feel free to post it either in the Zoom chat if you're here, or on the YouTube chat as well. I'm sure some of us will be looking at that and just making sure that that's being monitored and covered. We have a pretty exciting agenda today. So we had an introduction from Megan and Clara. Thank you for doing that. I'll do a deep dive into the core concepts behind Filecoin Plus. And given that my name is Deep, it'll probably be the deepest dive that we've recorded on this show to date. After that, we've got a very exciting community showcase session. Lots of different projects who have sort of self-selected themselves to be here and share their stories and their experiences with you. We'll have a slide up shortly with some names so that you can get excited for the speakers that will be popping up. And then we're going to dive into a little bit of governance for Filecoin Plus. Like, bi-weekly, this community meets and does a governance call. And today, for those of you that haven't been to one of those, we'll do a shorter version of that so that you can also participate in some of the hot topics at the moment for governance for Filecoin Plus. And then we also have ZX, who is part of some of the founding constructs and the FIP for Filecoin Plus, to discuss a little bit more about the different incentives that exist in the ecosystem and how it all sort of ties together. So really excited for action-packed day, lots of fun topics. So thanks again for being here. And if you're watching this as a recording in the future as well, thanks for making the time. Hopefully this is useful. please feel free to reach out to us on the Filecoin Plus channel, which is Phil Plus on the Filecoin Slack anytime with questions. Cool. So as I mentioned, here to do the deep dive on data cap and core concepts of Filecoin Plus. For those of you that don't already know me, my name is Deep. I am often around in the Filecoin Plus ecosystem side of things. You may have seen me from the biweekly governance call recordings, and of course, available and reachable on Filecoin Slack if you have any questions or want to discuss. So from the quick introduction that Megan gave you, some of you also may have seen this as a phrase before, but Filecoin Plus is unique because it adds this layer of social trust to a network that's otherwise like trustless, to incentivize like useful storage and leveraging the network in good and useful ways, so that we can help Filecoin effectively deliver its value and its mission in becoming a data store for humanity's most critical information. So how does that actually work? So Filecoin Plus itself was inspired in some way by Dr. Ostrom's Nobel-winning work governing the commons, based on which a set of principles were defined. I'm just going to chat about these briefly, and I think ZX might discuss them a little bit in his presentation later on as well. But these are the 7 principles that were originally defined in the FIP through which Filecoin Plus was actually established, which is FIP 0003. If any of you are interested in going to look at the Filecoin Improvement Program's repo and checking out the original write-up that drove the actual development of Filecoin Plus. The 7 principles are decentralization and diversity. So this is both in terms of geographic representation, but also use cases. It's also types of people and perspectives and different interaction points that are coming into the ecosystem. Transparency and accountability. So as Filecoin is a blockchain, we can track actions and messages on the chain, and using that to ensure that like things are actually executing in a way that we can confirm that the trust is being rewarded with follow-up is good and an important thing. Community governance, like bringing together different perspectives of people that are active in the community, have a voice, have something interesting to share, would like to improve the structure of the program is a key to how this program actually operates. Low cost dispute resolution. The idea that like everybody here has the ability to flag if something isn't really working, if something isn't going the way it was supposed to go, is important in maintaining like a longer term balance. Limited trust earned over time. As we discuss a little bit more about the core mechanisms that drive Filecoin Plus, this will start to make a little bit more sense about in terms of the interaction points that exist between the different stages and the different players in this ecosystem. Compliance, ensuring that you're actually complying with these principles and upholding sort of the value of the Filecoin network. And last but certainly not least, the ultimate goal of building a useful storage network. So the core mechanism is that, and I'm just going to read this out, and this phrase will not make sense to many of you at the moment. And my hope is that at the end of this talk, this will make sense to you. So we're going to start by reading this out just so you have sort of the overview, and then we'll dive into different portions of this so you can understand and break this down and see how the different components really come together in Filecoin Plus. So root key holders, notaries, clients, and miners interact through the through the allocation and spending of data cap. Notaries retrieve data cap in batches and allocate it to trustworthy clients that spend the data cap to fund storage deals, and miners that receive data cap receive a 10x boost to their quality adjusted power for the storage space offered in such deals, which increases their block reward share in the network. So let's talk about what that actually means. So that means there's a set of these stakeholders in this ecosystem, root key holders, notaries, clients, miners. They interact through something called data cap, which some of you may not know much about yet. And you can see that a lot of these arrows have data cap written on them, and we'll get into that shortly. And through this spending and allocation of this data cap, this program sort of comes together with the end result being that a miner, which is at the receiving end of all of these arrows, receives a boost effectively to the rewards that they get from the network. So let's get into this. What exactly is data cap? This is a question that I certainly get almost every single week. And data cap itself should be defined as a novel resource that exists within the Filecoin network. Clients that receive data cap can use it to make storage deals. So what that actually means is when a client is negotiating with a miner, today that often happens based on like a price, like valued in Filecoin. But data cap can also be seen as a resource that can be used, that is exchanged for the service of storing data on behalf of the miner for that particular client. And as data cap is actually used from that particular client address, it is consumed. So it is like a one-time use from like the client address to the client wallet as it's being leveraged to store useful information onto the network. And then miners that receive data cap for the amount of storage that they're providing corresponding or commensurate with the data cap that's coming in for it, there's an adjustment to their presence on chain effectively. And so what ends up happening is miners today measure their ROI or the expected rewards in the network by looking at their presence on that network, because that's defining for how likely they are to win block rewards over time. And with data cap, what ends up happening is for the amount of space that a miner is dedicated to a deal, they get a 10x quality multiplier effectively for having served this deal. So they're grossly incentivized to store these particular clients' information onto the network reliably, securely over a long period of time, and build up a reputation in doing so, because it benefits their long-term business. And as a result, it benefits the client that's actually bringing their legitimate use case on top of the Filecoin network. So just once again, data cap is just a novel resource that exists within the network. Clients use it effectively as a way in which they could pay to get the service of storage, and miners receive data cap from clients effectively that ends up boosting their quality adjusted power and therefore their long-term rewards from the network over time. It's just a number. And so how does it actually work? You see this complex sort of diagram at the bottom. Let's dig into like each of these little boxes and how it actually flows. So the set of stakeholders that I cited right at the start was root key holders, notaries, clients, and miners interact with the allocation and spending of data cap. So there's at least 4 there, which is root key holders, notaries, clients, and miners. And then the 5th one, which is very important stakeholder, is the actual governance community, which could even be you. So for the first one, root key holders. So root key holders act as executors for decisions that are actually made by the governance community. So what that actually means is they're representatives of reputable organizations in our ecosystem. So whether that's Filecoin or IPFS or just the Web3 space, they are tactically signers to a multi-sig wallet, which has the power to grant notary status and grant data cap to someone that has been given notary status, as well as the power to remove notaries. And we'll be chatting about notaries next. But what you should know about root key holders is that they're the ones that actually execute decisions that are being taken by the governance community on chain in a timely manner. So they're the follow-up effectively of conversations that happen to build this trust, whether that's through like GitHub issues or conversations that happen in our governance calls or on Slack. When decisions are being made by this community, the root key holders are the ones that are actually responsible for bringing that on chain and ensuring that there's a representation of that on the blockchain. You can read more about the root key holder role at the specific link below. So let's talk a little bit more about notaries. Notaries are, in a way, a very critical sort of core building role for the Filecoin Plus program, and are responsible for like the key sort of mechanism that exists, which is like giving data cap to clients that are worthy of using that data cap to go make deals. So let's dig into that a little bit. So notaries are fiduciaries of the network. They're there to serve the network, to ensure that the network grows in a positive direction and is delivering the value that it should for the rest of humanity. The way in which they do that is by allocating data cap to clients that receive it and that then subsidizes their reliable and useful storage services on the network over a period of time. How that happens is that clients will reach out to notaries to say, hey, I have this particular use case. I am using Filecoin for whatever reason it may be. That's valuable to the world. It's public, open data that could be retrievable by anyone. It's useful, and I want to bring it onto the network. And so ask me whatever questions you need of me and give me this data cap so I can put data onto the network easily. And so the role of the notary is to say, okay, great, makes sense. Let's talk a little bit more and do the requisite due diligence so that data cap can be awarded sort of commensurate with the amount of trust that that client can be given, as well as the reputation they may have and the work they may be doing onto the network. The work they might be doing to bring more useful data onto the network. And so they verify these clients through a process of due diligence, which is different for each notary. And we might even hear a little bit about that in the community showcase section of this summit. But the intent here is that they ensure that the allocation of data cap that they're making goes to parties that are worthy of that, because they're about to receive much cheaper storage, much lower friction to move storage onto the Filecoin network, and use that and ensure that it's not being misused or sort of given excessive leverage anyway, because it is a pretty important lever that exists within the network. There's also a set of like operational guidelines and auditing expectations for people that serve as notaries. And so, of course, complying with that is part of their role and their set of responsibilities as well. And so you might be asking, like, how does one even become a notary? So we actually have 14 notaries today. We went through a notary election process right at the start of this calendar year, and we're about to go through our second one. More on that during the community governance section of today's conference. But yeah, notaries are selected through this like notary election process, which includes like writing a fairly lengthy application, which is reviewed and graded based on a set of criteria that are maintained actually by the community itself. So the community, one of the things that the community works on is editing these criteria, editing the rubrics through which applications are graded. And so based on that, notaries are selected in as objective manner as possible, based on factors that we as a community have sort of agreed as good indicators of somebody that can truly serve the network, almost altruistically, but also more generally in that they are stakeholders of Filecoin. Oftentimes this is as simple as also holding Filecoin and knowing that like as the network does better, it's likely that the value will go up. So you can read a little bit more about the notary role as well at the link that I've shared below. Cool. Clients. So this one, some of you are probably a little bit more familiar with, but a client is one of the participants in the demand side of the Filecoin network. A client in the Filecoin Plus ecosystem specifically is typically looking to store open, publicly available and retrievable data onto the network, and has received data cap from a notary through an application to that notary, through the processes, has gotten through effectively the due diligence and the processes of that specific notary. And they're now looking to allocate that data cap to make deals on the network, and will do so responsibly, which means storing with a diverse set of miners geographically and in numbers, and replicating that data and to ensure that it stays safe, making use of like the services that exist like fast retrieval to ensure that it is retrievable both for them and for others, because typically this is data that other people might also be interested in, and of course not violating the terms of service of a miner as a good acting client that might have to do with local regulation or other policies that the miner may set in place. And last of the set from the diagram, miners. Miners are the supply side of the Filecoin network. They're making storage deals with clients so that they can increase their rewards on the network over time. And they're incentivized to take deals from these clients that have gone through this verification process with a notary and have been given data cap, because data cap increases their block rewards for that particular part of their footprint on chain by 10x. And so it is very useful as a lever to incentivize miners to have special pricing, often lower pricing for the category of deals that comes from such clients, which are called verified deals. And recommendation to you, if you haven't already done this and you're a miner that's looking to store data cap, but just in general, a miner participating in the Filecoin Plus ecosystem is typically someone who's also self-selected themselves into being on the Filecoin Plus registry. So there's actually a page which has like a list of miners, and that's driven by a markdown file in the client onboarding repo of Filecoin Plus. So if you're a miner, you're watching this session, you're interested in storing deals from verified clients or looking to make verified deals, I would say head over to that GitHub link and just PR yourself onto that so that you too are more discoverable. Last, the Filecoin Plus governance community. So this includes people that are in the previous sections as well. So they may be notaries, clients, miners, and other interested members of the community. That certainly includes you if you're here watching today. And you might be asking, like, what is the role of this particular part or this set of stakeholders? And the role is effectively to help drive this program forward. Come to meetings, understand different perspectives, talk through different complexities, talk through different issues. We have a ton of interesting things that we need to work through together. Like governance is a pretty challenging aspect, especially when it comes to a system that's this complex and has such a interesting problem of like building trust in a trustless world in a way. And so, all sorts of topics ranging from like what is fine in terms of clients storing data with themselves, or how should we ensure the data cap is reaching all geographies in the world? How do we ensure that there's enough data cap reaching all geographies in the world? What parts of the program do we want to standardize on? Like, what parts of the program do we want to allow nuanced solutions for? So an interesting topic that we'll be discussing in today's governance call is like, how do we serve clients that are bringing like massive data sets to Filecoin Plus? So that includes like things that are like greater than 500 petabytes basically. So if a client has like a massive public data set in the petabyte scale and is interested in storing that on the network, and we as a community believe that that's, you know, worthy use case of Filecoin and we'd be excited to support it, then how do we actually like distribute data cap at scale? And then how do we actually audit that the client is complying with what they said they would be? What are ways in which we can actually, you know, move forward in terms of transparency? This is like the first time anybody's like thinking about these problems at this scale. And so it's a pretty exciting set of things to talk through. And so we'd be more than excited to have more people in the room. And the way in which you participate in that is by joining the Filecoin Plus channel, of course, on Filecoin Slack. That's a public channel. So as long as you're on Filecoin Slack, you should be able to search it and join it. Participating in the community governance calls. Those happen every other Tuesday. We actually rotate the time zones for those. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what they are, but if you take a look at the Filecoin community events calendar, you can add that to your calendar. And the intent is at least one of every 2 calls you should be able to join, depending on where you are in the world. So it might be really late at night, or it might be really early in the morning for you. And if that's inconvenient, sorry, we're trying to, you know, of course, shepherd a lot of different time zones. But we have adjusted it so that there's like a staggered sort of like 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening for most people. And so you should be able to join one of them. And of course, if it turns out that you can't join any of them, then that's a conversation worth happening, because we certainly don't want to keep anybody not from being able to participate in this community. The recordings for all those calls are available on YouTube. So if you actually go to the Filecoin channel on YouTube, there should be a playlist that just has like all the governance calls so far, or at least a subset, because we only started doing that a couple of months ago. And this will probably be on the Filecoin YouTube channel, of course, but the governance call that we're going to have later on in the summit will also be there. And the intent is to continue doing that because we want to build a store and historic tracking effectively of how we're making decisions as well. And so if you're just catching up, it's never too late to start. Check out the playlist, watch some of the recordings, and then come join us at the next call, which will happen in like 2 hours if you're still here, or in 2 weeks. And the last bit I'd flag is, even if you're not able to make it to the calls or you're just watching in the channel, the actual way in which decisions get pushed mostly is through like conversation and discussion that happens in the notary governance repo. So the repo that's linked right at the bottom of the slide has something like 15, 16 current open issues of ranging complexity all the way from like a dispute resolution, audit tracking, to some of the topics we discussed around like supporting larger data sets and figuring out better models of like distributing data cap. And so feel free to just go to the repo, read on some of the issues themselves, leave your thoughts in comments. Oftentimes we'll see people do a conjunction of both that as well as participating in the Filecoin Plus channel to ensure that like active conversation is happening across all of these fronts. Okay, so what I want to do is go back to this diagram now, because we've talked about a bunch of different words on this thing, but now we need to make sure that it actually makes sense. So we talked about the root key holders, which are the executors of information that's actually happening on chain. The notaries, that are the fiduciaries of the network that are actually allocating data cap to like clients that they believe are worthy of that data cap. And so you can see the vets and approves request coming in from a client. And as a result, data cap is being allocated to the client. And then clients take that data cap and have it as associated with like a wallet address. And when making a storage deal from that address, their data cap effectively is deployed, and that incentivizes a miner because a miner receives a 10x deal quality multiplier. So you understand the core sort of mechanism that drives Filecoin Plus. And then the last bit I would say is the blue box that we didn't talk about until just the very end, which is the community governance aspect, which includes the defined rubric through which notaries are actually selected. So every time we have an election cycle, the notary applications are parsed and scored against this rubric. And as a result, n number of notaries are selected. And then that goes to the root key holders who actually sign that onto the chain. And so again, there's the benefit of this being on a blockchain, of course, is that everything's being written as a message somewhere to a block and can all be tracked. And that's sort of what the bottom third of this diagram represents. Cool. So hopefully at this point, you look at this and you're not as confused as you were as when we started this talk. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them. I'll take a look at the chat briefly. But yeah, what should you do now? So probably you should stay for the rest of this day because you'll learn a bunch from the upcoming sessions, and it's going to be really exciting, and you'll probably get exposed to a bunch of different things. But maybe more specifically, make sure you go through like the following set of resources if you're just catching up. So of course, join the channel in Filecoin Slack and come along to our governance bi-weekly calls. But also, we now have like documentation that's been published on docs.filecoin.io, which is of course always a work in progress. So if you've got suggestions and thoughts on that, please feel free to open up an issue or make an improvement directly and PR it. And I'll be sure to take a look and integrate the improvements that you might have. There's the client onboarding repository, which we haven't really talked about. And so I'll just spend a second on that. The client onboarding repository is also the one, by the way, where the miner listing is. So if you're a miner that wants to get onto that, you want to head over there and look for miners.md. But that repo is sort of the central flow of like applications. So like in this diagram where we have this dotted box, like this dotted box sort of happens in that repo. So if you look through the issues of that repo, you'll see, you know, the 300 plus applications that have come in for clients, which are asking for like X amount of data cap each with some sort of basic explanation on who they are. And then notaries that have carried out a due diligence process, which may include asking more questions about their background, their funding sources, what their project actually entails, a little bit more about their data set and what they're actually bringing onto the network, their intended use of the data cap that they'd be rewarded. So that could include how they'll allocate it, how they'll find miners, what sort of deals they'll make, etc. And then based on that, like decisions being made by notaries that include like granting or not for like that particular client. So all of that can be seen in this repo in case you're curious. But also if you're a client that's looking to apply for data cap, this and the docs are probably where you want to start, and they'll point you sort of in the right direction, which oftentimes will be what's in the last bullet here, which is the Filecoin Plus registry. So if you're actually a client that wants to go get data cap today, the first path is to go to this site called verify.glyph.io. That will get you your first small allocation of data cap, which is 32 gigabytes, which you should be able to use to do some basic testing. But once you run out of that and you want something a little bit larger scale, you probably want to head over to this site where you'll be able to click through the flow for a client and actually make your own application for data cap, which of course will show up as an issue on the client onboarding repo. And that'll be your primary interaction point with the notary that you've chosen to work with, who will be vetting you. And last, just mentioned on the previous slide as well, which is the notary governance repo. So this is sort of the central community governance and notary repo, where we do a bunch of decisions and discussion around how the program itself is evolving, but also where elections are run from, as well as like where we do a bunch of the dispute resolution stuff. And so this repo is all the hot topics of Filecoin Plus. If you want to go see what the open conversations are, if you want to participate in shaping the program, that's where I'd head over to. Check out the open issues and make sure to read through some of the readmes that might help. That's also where we have some descriptions, especially around like the root key holder role and the notary role in much, much greater detail than I covered today. So if you're interested in reading a little bit more about the specifics of the operational responsibilities and the roles, then please feel free to check that out as well. And of course, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Deep Kapoor on the Filecoin Slack if you have any questions. Certainly available on the Filecoin Plus channel. That's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. We also have a lot of other more wonderful and knowledgeable people, some of whom are here today, including Megan and others, that would be happy to help address some of your questions. So the channel is definitely the best place to flag them. All right, with that, just want to thank you all again. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to take a quick look at the questions to see if there's anything that's worth flagging. Let's see. Okay, there's a question from Chris here. So let's say we have sourced 100 terabytes of long-term storage data. Can we assign this to our own network through Filecoin Plus, or will it be spread across the network? So that's a pretty interesting question, Chris. So if you've sourced your own data, if that data is actually open and meant to be openly retrievable by anybody, then certainly you could become a client on Filecoin Plus. But what it would really do for you is make it easy for you to store like multiple replicas of that data so that it is like safe and secure across like the Filecoin network. So you effectively use it to either reach other miners that are in your geography or reach miners that are outside of your geography at a heavily subsidized rate. And that would be the real reason you'd use it. In terms of like using Filecoin Plus to just store the data like with yourself, like to some extent, I think that is also deemed to be like an acceptable use, just because at the end of the day, the goal of Filecoin Plus is to make Filecoin a more useful network. But there are like policies that most notaries are imposing in terms of like the limit to which you can do that. And so most people are sort of going around like 20 to 25% of the deals being made with minor addresses that they might own, whereas the majority of that is still being stored like outside of their sort of set of miners. And oftentimes that's through like actually like replicas or copies of that data, because that also helps improve resiliency, reliability of that data. And of course, if it's open data that people are interested in, then storing it in different geographies also makes it accessible with people in those geographies, because retrieval for them ends up being cheaper because physics and networking is faster when it's near to you. Hopefully that answers the questions, Chris. If you have a follow-up, feel free to share in the chat. There's also a question on, will you share this deck with us? That's a good question. I didn't explicitly feel like I needed to hide it. So fair enough. I will drop a link into the Filecoin Plus channel. So that's another incentive for you to be there. And you can rip off my deck and ask me any specific questions that you have there. Cool. Megan, did you see any other questions in here that I should? I'm just scrolling through here in case if you catch anything.
I'll keep scrolling, but I think that was the main question. Though there was some questions about just block rewards. Maybe talk a little bit more about the benefits and the increased block rewards.
Yeah, so I know that ZX is going to dig into this a little bit in his talk as well, as he talks about the economic implications of Filecoin Plus and some of the aspects of how that influences miner behavior on the network. But I can do that too, briefly. So the way block rewards work, for those of you that aren't familiar, miners today have a slice of the network, and the slice of the network effectively defines their probability of getting a reward in that network. And what data cap does is that the slice of it that is associated with a data cap based deal is actually multiplied by 10. And so for a miner that's making a verified deal with a client that's come through this flow that we just talked about, they receive a massive multiplier on their presence on the network. And so the quality adjusted power goes up quite a bit, which then means that the probability that they're going to get rewards over time increases in the network. And so effectively the network is subsidizing this interaction between a client that's gone through this flow and received data cap and a miner that's willing to store that deal.
Oh, we've got a great question from Michael Mooring, something that I know you and I have been talking about lately. Who monitors the notaries?
Nice. That's an excellent question. I might use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about, just in general, things that we're thinking about on that front. The first is that I want to flag that there's no perfect answer to this problem. The goal as a community for us is to build as much transparency as possible. And you certainly did not miss that detail. I think there's a certain amount of complexity and rigor that comes here that is non-trivial and something that we're actively working towards in the community. So the way that we're solving that is, of course, by having as much transparency as we can. That includes having dashboards and having traceability of how data cap allocations are being made and how they're flowing through from miners to clients and from notaries to clients and clients to miners, and then coming back and making sure that that's sort of in compliance. There's already a community-based project that talks about notary allocations, and then we've got a couple others that we've handed out grants for. So I know Megan and the Filecoin Foundation, actually Sonia, I think, is here. She'll be doing a session on developer grants. So if this is a problem that you're specifically interested in helping solve as well, we'd be more than excited to see more people sort of participate in solving that problem. I can also show you briefly for a few minutes, maybe one of the things that we've been working on. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So this is one of the dashboards that exists in the Filecoin Plus system or program, which includes decisions that are being made by notaries. So this is currently private. This is going to be released in a couple of weeks more publicly because we're still fixing some things and doing some testing. But I don't want to pick on a specific, notary reminder here, but like, for example, there's like 16 verified clients from this particular notary. You can go and see like what those addresses are. For example, there's this client applied through this GitHub issue. They received 5 debibytes, of which they've used about 1.2. They made 45 deals with that. That's going across like this entire set of miner IDs, and you can actually see like how that's breaking down percentages across different miners. And so linking this back to the notaries would be like the next level analysis that we'd want to do. And so here's like sort of, very brief example. I'm going to go into this dashboard in a little bit more detail if you have time in the community showcase section anyway, but this is an example of like awesome work that you can do with like, radical transparency through the benefits of actually like running on a blockchain. So yeah, who actually monitors the notaries? Everyone does. Everyone that participates in the community that wants to make the time to follow how decisions are being made and what's actually being executed on chain should be helping to monitor the notaries. The intent is that we work together as a community to ensure that we're working efficiently and effectively to solve this problem of building trust where we can and ensuring that like Filecoin itself is becoming more useful over time. Does that answer your question, Michael? Any follow-up? Cool. There's also a question on like language translation. So all of this is recorded. This will be on YouTube. Once it's on YouTube, we'll certainly have subtitles in different languages. We have a small set of languages that we're already considering. If you're here and you speak a different tongue and would rather we consider subtitles in different languages as well, please feel free to drop that into chat and we'll certainly find a way to make sure it's accessible to you as well. Awesome. So with that, I'd like to kick us into sort of the next phase, which is, I think, the most exciting phase of today's conference. This is the project showcase, where a bunch of community members and many of you who have participated either in just Filecoin in general and finding ways to make it more useful, or even directly as part of the Filecoin Plus program, have things that you've been wanting to show. We've got a pretty fantastic lineup, and I don't want to steal any thunder, so I'm going to hand it over to Megan to talk about who's coming on and what they're going to be talking about. Thank you so much for humoring me.
Thank you so much, Deep. That was such a wonderful explanation. And Deep will be running the community governance call in about an hour, so more Deep to come. Well, first, I totally agree with Deep, but I think that the community showcase is definitely the part of this that I'm most excited about, because the Filecoin Plus community is what is going to make or break this program. And we have a pretty amazing community so far, and we're really excited to have more and more people join this community. We have, looking at the things that people have built and the things that are coming up in this community showcase, like everybody watching this, to feel inspired, to think about the things that they can build. And also, I want to be the voice of the Filecoin Foundation and let everyone know that there is grant support for things tools that you want to build, or tools that you think that you need, but that you are not the right person to build. The Filecoin Foundation is here for you. We're here to support all of that. So please be inspired by everything that you are about to see. I also want to introduce Galen McAndrew, if we can throw the spotlight onto him for a minute, who is going to be joining the Filecoin Foundation in about another month, but has graced us, here today to say hello and introduce himself to all of you guys. And you'll be seeing a lot more of his face in the near-term future.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Super excited. Thank you, Deep, for that really great overview. Megan and Claire for talking through sort of things from the foundation side. I'm definitely looking forward to kind of meeting and hearing from the different people that are going to go on to present the projects that they're working on and this showcase. I think it could be sort of great examples, and I'm already seeing some really fascinating networking that's happening in the chat. So I just want to keep encouraging like that cross-pollination that's happening in that communication.
Awesome. And so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rob McGinnis, who's going to be our first presenter. He's going to talk to us about how to improve data durability with Reed-Solomon encoding. Yeah, let's get started. That sounds awesome.
Cool. I promise it'll be a little bit more exciting than the title sounds. There's also not going to be a live demo because, as you guys know, if you've ever tried storing stuff, it takes a little bit longer than 5 to 10 minutes to get all the way end to end on stuff. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what I've been working on, why I've gotten involved in storing data on the Filecoin network, and some of the work that we've done to prepare data for storage in a way that is a bit more resilient than simple replication. So with that said, let me get my screen shared here and kick off a very short presentation for you guys. Clicks. Oops. Okay, opportunities for data encoding in Filecoin. Again, that's me, Rob McGinnis. There's a lot more past work, but relevant past work includes EtherStore. It was a distributed storage solution that utilized the front office workstations and organizations to essentially provide an alternative for on-site NAS storage or a secondary target. So you add up all the spare storage space, all the spare hard drive space across a number of front office workstations, and it looks and acts and walks and talks just like a regular drive, except it's obviously slightly more complicated than that. And then Moostar, which is really the project that requires the most data storage right now. We're using roadside cameras to detect infrared cameras, so it works day and night, to detect large wildlife on the road, and then alert drivers in real time using, flashy lights. Reason being, I moved from New York out to Wyoming about 2 years ago, and we are blessed. We're surrounded by very large, very cool animals, but we see some moose hit on the side of the road, a couple times a year, and far more deer than that. And trying to come up with a solution that is portable and that is helpful for both drivers and wildlife was something I was happy to be able to work on here. So we'll see the rig for that in just a second. This is less interesting, I think. This is EtherStore. 3 tiers of local, an in-organization, and then web-based version backup. So it's like read through, write through caching with all sorts of things all chopped up in interesting ways. But the Moostar stuff is what I find most interesting right now. Moose, obviously, you can tell. We're using a FLIR. We got a FLIR camera and a couple of other brands that we're testing out. And this is the trailer that has just arrived. A bunch of community organizations got together and we gathered some funding to purchase a solar trailer. And you can see the really tall mast there that you mount the camera to. And information comes down to my little neural network in here. We snap a single frame. It takes about 1.5 seconds to process each frame right now. It'd be nice if it were faster, but that's to be worked on. And then you can see these yellow lights here that aren't hooked up to anything yet that will be alerting drivers that there is presently a large animal in the middle of the road or on the side of the road, and they ought to slow down. But it's not just one of those dumb, flashy animal beware lights. It's a right now kind of thing. So how is this relevant to what we're doing with Filecoin? Well, there is a ton of data that we need to store for Moostar, more data than I have the local storage for here, and I've got just a ton of stuff out in the garage. And of course, that's not resilient. It's local storage. I'm right at the floodplain here, so who knows, bad things can happen. And we want to make sure that all the data that we collect is stored in perpetuity and available, ideally, for anybody to access worldwide. So how do we do that? Well, we use Filecoin, obviously, but there are some challenges with simple replication. So say you want to store a large data set and you chop it into, say, 40 slices or so. Let's say you do 2 times replication. If you lose the wrong 2 copies of that file, you're out of luck. You're basically, you do no longer have the ability to recover that file. That's very frustrating. And you want things to last for a very long time, you just need to look at this. We're storing stuff on a bunch of different people's systems all over the world, and the annualized disk failure rate adds up to about 50% within 5 years. All of these columns add up, right? That means half of all hard disks fail within 5 years, which means that if we're using, non-professional individuals to store stuff, which is it's likely now, things will change. There'll be better best practices and stuff shared out, but it's very real. It's a very real possibility that within 5 years, 2 of those copies of data that will be required for your entire file to be accessible may no longer be accessible, right? So the quick comparison of basic replication using multiple copies of the same data, errors are detectable. You can't get the files, but they're not recoverable. The alternative is data encoding. Now it takes some extra data. You generate some extra data up front, and you store that together with your original file. And that enables you to both detect and recover from errors. So some example types I'm not going to get into are like Reed-Solomon encoding, Hamming codes, BCH, etc. I've got my contact details at the end of the presentation. You can get in touch with me on Slack if you want to learn any more. The brief example here, just for comparison of the math, a 40-part file using 2-time replication, you got to store 80 parts. You can lose only 2 of those, the wrong 2, and the file is completely unrecoverable. Now with really, really meaty, like usually you don't need to do it this much, but really meaty data encoding, you can store the same number, 80 parts, but as long as you can retrieve any 40 of those parts, you're good to go. So you can literally lose half of all of it. It doesn't matter which 40 you pick. You get 40 of them, you're good to go. So that helps in a number of different ways. First of all, obviously recovery, but imagine one of those replicas is out on the slowest local internet connection you can find. My download speed's great here in Wyoming, but our uploads are capped at way lower than the normal 10%. It's like down at 1%. So coming down is easy, but going back up is challenging. Once you're done reading 40 of those parts, you're good to go, right? It's not free though. So there are upfront costs. So the time you've got to pre-process the data, and there's space. You have to have twice the amount of space on your available beforehand if you want to encode things this way. If you're doing just replication, you only need the exact size of the file. If you're going to pre-encode it, you need double the size. You don't always have to do it double. It could be a little bit less, but generally speaking, for this comparison with the 2x replication, you need twice as much space. So that could be challenging. Finally, upon retrieval, the client needs to post-process the data a little bit. And this can be, a little bit challenging. Sorry, not challenging, easy to do, but it takes a little bit of time. And of the order of minutes, though, for a few gigabytes and things like that, it's basically straight line. So it's linear to the size of the file. And so again, nothing's free. There are pros and cons to everything, but yeah, that's how we are planning to store the MooStar data, and we plan to get some of this code out there so that other people can take a look at it and maybe utilize some of these pre and post processing approaches in order to make their data more resilient in the network. So that's about it. I had 10 minutes. I think I did it right. Happy to answer any questions now, or feel free to contact me on Slack at RobMac.
That was awesome, Rob. Fantastic. I'll hang a second to see if there's any questions in the chat. Seems like there's definitely some need for this in British Columbia. Also love the term Moo Star. There's a question about, can you do bears?
Yeah, so we're currently trained up with moose, elk, mule deer, black bears, and cows. But given that as long as we find the data sets or produce them ourselves, we can train up for basically anything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Such a cool use case. What a great presentation. Awesome. Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, next up, we have Steve Song, who's going to talk to us about the latest progress of IPFS Union.
Okay, hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Great.
Okay, beautiful. Let me find my presentation first. Okay. Yes, so hi everyone. It's very nice to have me to do this presentation. And I'm Steve from IPFS Union. First, let me give a short introduction about our company. IPFS Union is a leading decentralized storage solution provider. We are currently based in China and headquartered in Shanghai. And we now have more than 100 employees for the R&D team, and they all have a very good background from both hardware companies like AMD and NVIDIA, and also from the software companies like SAP, Microsoft, Huawei, Alibaba, and so on. So we start to know the Filecoin project from 3 years before, and we joined all the testnet and the Space Race 1 and Space Race 2, and currently we are doing the slingshot as well. So we are really strive to build the best infrastructure for the Filecoin and IPFS ecosystem, and we are really want to push the massive commercial application of decentralized storage in real business case. And we have developed this Filecoin Explorer called FileScout. I don't know if you have used it yet. If not, you can access to the website, which is filescout.io, and it's also available both on mobile and PC version. And from this Explorer, you can find all these major data here. For example, like the total power, and also the 24 hours average mining reward, and also the current sector initial pledge, and also basically all the informations you need or you can get from the Filecoin system, you can find from the FileScout. So like I said before, here is some major features of FileScout. First is a data overview, and the second one is a power growth statistics, and the statistics for the base fee and gas. And also you can find all these informations about every nodes and miners, and you can also find the orphan block statistics here. So once you identify these orphan blocks, you can maybe find how to optimize your mining algorithm or your hardware schedule. So we are very open, and we are really want to hear more real requirements from the Filecoin community, so we can keep improving our Explorer and help more people to access to the Filecoin network easier. So currently we have like about 100,000 registered users, and we have a very good PV and UV figures right now. And so if you have any further suggestion, or if you want to see more new features, you can contact me later via Slack, and we will after evaluation about these requirements, we will put them in our development plan. So maybe hopefully you can see new features in maybe in the next version of FileScout. And the second one we want to discuss is IPFS font, which is the application we developed for the slingshot now, and it currently ranked number 2 in the Filecoin slingshot, and have total 1 PB data stored by far. And actually, the concept behind this application is not only to join the slingshot and get the reward, but we also want to keep improving this this website or this application, and so it can be actually used in the real life. Currently, you can see the UI of this website is still in a draft version, but it's very simple, but it's usable right now. So you can find all the files names, file size, the create time of the file, and you can even download it. So it's usable, but not perfect yet. And we are willing to make it better in the near future. And also, probably some of you have heard, have seen from the Filecoin blog report that we have already signed contract with the Chinese government, and we commit to build one of the biggest storage data center in China, which cost total 1.3 billion US dollar, equivalent Chinese yuan. So it's almost like 8.5 billion Chinese yuan. So it's a huge investment. But the reason why we commit to do so is because that we really want to, like I said before, we really want to push the decentralized storage technology into real business and into the real life. And after this data center has been accomplished, it will contain more than 500,000 servers in this place. So it will be really powerful data center, and we are aiming to build more and to cooperate more in both China and also European and American. And we actually we are currently have set up some partnerships with global global companies which are interested in the Filecoin and IPFS project. So after the pandemic has passed, we will definitely travel to European, to American, and to see how to build the further partnerships and to really help the Filecoin ecosystem and push it move forward. So that's basically what I want to share today, and thanks for you listening. And if you are interested in the IPFS Union and maybe or you have any question, you can contact me via Slack. Thank you very much.
That was amazing, Steve. So cool. And also can't wait for the pandemic to be over for many reasons, but very much can't wait for the pandemic to be over and for you to be able to come out here and visit and figure out more connections with the Filecoin network. Awesome. That was so cool. Next up, we have Laura R. from FileDrive, who is going to give a talk called meetfileplus.info, which is one of my favorite dashboards. Lauren?
Hey, hi guys, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. Let me share my slide first. Okay, cool. Okay. And hello, friends from all over the world. Happy Filecoin Plus Day. This is Laura from FieldDrive. I'm so glad to be here with you today. Please let me introduce the first Filecoin dashboard, filecoinplus.info to you. It is a website for recording data cap allocation and verify dual transactions developed by our team. So in the first part, please let me do a brief overview of my team, FileDrive. FileDrive has been in Filecoin ecosystem from 2019, and we concentrate on solutions of distributed storage based on IPFS and Filecoin network. Since last year, we have been participating in slingshot computation and storing over 1 PB useful data from public data sites. And sorry, I forgot to move the slide. Okay. And as a developer of the Filecoin network, we developed a tool which named the Go Graph Select, a tool for data piece slicing in order to contribute to the storage market on Filecoin. So we made it open source on GitHub. So here is the link, and anyone who wants to use it to store their data can use it for free. And if you are interested in our project, we'd like you to contribute codes anytime. And as a client, FieldDrive has been involved in Filecoin Plus project since its beta version, which means last year. And the first time we received data cap allocation was from Filecoin Foundation in December last year. We believe Filecoin Plus project can encourage miners to store real useful data instead of garbage data with 10 plus quality adjusted power in a very fair way. So that's a short introduction of my team. Now let's move to the next part. I'll talk about why we need Filecoin Plus dashboard and how does filecoinplus.info work. So as we know, Filecoin Plus project has been running for several months. Over 600 TB data caps has been allocated to clients by notaries all over the world, and with thousands of verified deal transactions. Now, notaries and clients are use GitHub, this GitHub Filecoin Plus client onboarding as a platform for allocation communications. It works really good, however, it's not efficient for us to search some relative information. For community members, especially notaries, clients, and miners, we do need a tool for data cap allocation record and deal flow analyze. For notaries, they need to know, they need to ensure their clients spend data cap responsibly and not over allocate data cap to a single entity. And on the other hand, their record of allocation decisions should be kept and conducted in public as they promised when they applied to become a notary. And for clients like FieldDrive, we really care about how many data caps notary have and when was the last time they allocated data caps to clients, so we can decision who we should send requirements to. And for miners, allocation records can help them find clients with data cap, which they can try to communicate with them and work together with them also. So to meet these processing needs, our team designed and developed this website, filecoinplus.info. as a tools to record every approved allocation and every verified deals with data caps. So the first version launched in March this year. And now we are working on the version 2.1 with new features and better UI design. So I will do a demo to tell you guys how to use it and how about the new functions of version 2.1. Okay, here is the website. The website address is fileplus.info, which is easy to remember. So, and on the top of it, this is an official logo of Filecoin Plus project. Thanks for Jennifer from Protocol Labs. She sent it to us. And there are three charts here to for data analysis. So the first one presents daily daily data cap allocation. Like today, there are over 38 TB data cap was allocated to clients. And in the middle, we can see the total number of data cap in the Filecoin network, which is 2.1 PB right now. And over 70% of them are waiting for clients and miners to store them into the network. And here is a pie chart. This pie chart is for allocated data cap, and it states in of each region. So we can see over 67% of allocated data cap were approved by notaries in the Great China. So when we look down, there is a list of 14 notaries now we have with relative information, such as their name, organization, location, total data cap they receive from rookie holders, and how many data cap they have already allocated and how many they remain. And when we move to their name, you can see there is a little labels here. This labels is for you to, This labels is to show their Filecoin address. This address is for notaries to receive or allocate data cap to clients. So if we want to if we want to know more details about the allocation record by each notaries, it's very simple. You just need to click their name, and you can see all records of their allocations. For example, our dear Philip from Filecoin Foundation. You can see we are going to the notary page. All clients who got data cap from Philip are right here with their name, Filecoin address, the total number of data caps they received from Philip, and when they got this data cap. You can see here is some blue arrows. It will lead us to more detailed informations. So let me just, for example, the first allocation record of Philip. You can see more detailed information comes out, such as the verified deal transaction information, like its epoch, deal ID, payload CID, and who the miner ID who provide this storage service for this deal. And about the deal ID, this deal ID also can let us get more details. Just click it, and it will let us to the Filecoin Explorer. You can see more information here. Even you can find further information about the provider, like the storage miner, just on the Filecoin Explorer. And if this is about the notary page, so if you want to find, if you want to see the client page, there are two ways to lead you to the client page. The first is just use the search bar. You can type the client's name, then you will enter to it. Oh, sorry, this is. There is another method is to just click their name. Maybe, okay, filter. So you can see more detailed information about this client in the client page. So I think there are the key functions of this version. I'll share my, okay. I'll come back to my slide. Okay. So there are other key functions of this version. Hope you guys like it. I think it's easy to use, and it record really useful informations. So we now have it in the second version. I think this website is in a very early stage, so we really need your information, your feedbacks, ideas, or suggestions of this of this website. So we will continue to evolve and develop more functions of this website. So please feel free to DM me or Felix on Slack or through our social media account to contact with us. Okay, that's all my presentation today. Thank you guys for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. That was really fantastic look at File Drive. Great. I don't see any questions coming up right away in the chat, but we've got your Slack handles there and people can follow up directly. So up next, I think Andrew was able to join us, Andrew Hill, Textile.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're going to reschedule things a little bit.
Okay.
So Andrew will hop in like 15-ish minutes. In the meantime, like I just want to check if either Charles, Cow, or Maggie were around. If not, I can do my bit on the dashboard so we can look at both the dashboards at the same time as well. Is Charles around by any chance? I don't see him. I know Maggie's here, I think, or she was at some point. Just give them 30 seconds to say anything. If not,
I would just prefer not to go at this exact moment, if that's okay.
No worries. Yeah, totally fine. I can do it. Is that all right if I hijack?
Yeah, hop in.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the just general like dashboards and tracking and stuff. So Laura, first up, like thank you so much for sharing your like more on filplus.info. Like it's been a tremendously useful tool for me already. And I think having many tools like that is very useful for the system as well. Like it leads to better accountability, better transparency, and also data integrity. And so there's like a couple of dashboards that are being worked on. This is the other one that I briefly mentioned. The shout out to Catalin Barra, who's been working on this one. This is part of the digital mob team who received a grant for some aspects of this as well. And so you should see this, for those of you that are looking at this as like an alternate data source to filplus.info. The intent is to have multiple independent sources of data that provide their perspective and view so that together we can work to build agreement on the state of the ecosystem and make sure that we're all sort of like on the same page about progress that's being made and tracking like the right set of metrics. And so a couple of things I want to highlight on this particular dashboard are the following. So the first is, as a community, one of the metrics that we've been anchoring on recently is this concept of like time to data cap. Time to data cap is the idea that like it takes some amount of like time from as a client entering the ecosystem to actually receiving data cap to your address that you can then use to go make deals. It's like the latency that you would incur if you're someone that's actually like interested in leveraging this particular ecosystem, but need to go through the flow, right? Like you need to go understand what's actually happening and all that before. And then once you at what point do you actually receive that data cap to your, it's telling me my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me? Okay, I see Galen nodding, so I'm going to take that as a yes. Yeah, so the, can you see my screen also? I think.
Yeah, we're going to.
Do you see the dashboard or do you see the, I think you should see the
all tabs.
You see the all tabs one?
Yeah.
Okay, now you see the dashboard.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This is what I wanted to call out. So the time to data cap is representative of effectively like when a client makes an application to a notary and like how long it actually takes for the correspondence between that client and that notary to actually get data cap back to the client. So there's a couple of ways in which this happens. Like as I'd mentioned previously in my talk, you can get data cap automatically. So that means like going to like a site like this, where you like log in via your GitHub account and you get 32 gigabytes of data cap almost instantly, right? Like the delta here is like 30 seconds. And if you look at this particular notary, the automated notary here, the amount of people that have gone through this flow is like pretty substantive. So like this is the notary that owns verified.gov.io. Of like the 330-ish clients that have come to this, 200 of them have come to this flow. So for these particular clients, their time to data cap was like 30 seconds, which is not a lot at all. And so I may actually make this full screen as well, so I can share some other parts of it. But yeah, so 30 seconds brings the time down substantively. But for the remaining like data cap applications that are coming through, those are all manual. They're all coming through GitHub. They require like interaction between a notary and a client to actually discuss like aspects of an application. So I think the one that I was like jumping into before was this application, right? So this, again, not to pick on anybody specifically, I just randomly picked this one because it has numbers, but like you can see that there's this GitHub application that came in like similar to what you just saw on fileplus.info. There's like this interaction between a client and notary, and this takes time. And so what we want to do as a community is like track this and ensure that over time we can reduce how long this takes, because ultimately, if like we're measuring ourselves on making Filecoin more productive and making the ecosystem more useful, then bringing this number down means that like clients themselves are able to be unblocked as fast as possible and have the minimal like perceived friction from the actual ecosystem to bring their stuff onto the network. And so this is something that like I've been paying a lot of attention to in our like biweekly calls, and we've also got other data sources that have popped up. I know Andrew Hill, for example, has started tracking some of this stuff as well through a GitHub file that can be downloaded and used by any other dashboard that's being built. So what I'd like to call out is like specifically, you know, if you're interested in getting into this ecosystem, helping build transparency is absolutely one really, really useful way to do it. The foundation will be talking about grants that are available for you if that's the path you want to take pursue, or if you're just already part of Filecoin in some way, such as the case was with the File Drive project. You know, you're probably already intimately familiar with how some of these things work. You should feel free to get started. There's a bunch of data sources that we'd be happy to chat about. And so if you have any questions about like how this was constructed or where you can access some of this data, we're more than happy to chat through it. The other thing that I'd shown earlier in the talk, earlier in this conference, that I'll just briefly highlight again for those of you that have just joined, is part of this flow, like similar to what you saw on fileplus.info, where like once you click into like an actual like client, you can see the amount of deals that they've made, which is with the data cap that they've used so far, how they've made their deals and where those deals are actually going. And this is interesting because as part of the client due diligence process, oftentimes like clients are also sharing information on their data cap usage plan and their like storage onboarding and allocation plan on the network. And so building transparency and auditing on these things over time as we start to construct a better understanding of how data cap actually flows will be very important in like the long-term efficacy of Filecoin Plus as a program. So yeah, a huge shout out to Laura and team. Great shout out to Catalina as well for this dashboard. And I'm really excited to see any more of you that are working on these things. Shout out to Andrew as well, as somebody that kickstarted some of this measurement of time to data cap to begin with. And so, yeah, really looking forward to building a more productive program with all of you over the coming months and years. Thanks, Galen and Megan. I'll hand it back to you to, I think, loop in Jonathan Doden next.
Great. And just before we hand it to Jonathan, I want to take the chance to plug again Dev Grants, since we'll talk about them later and Deep, but just since Deep brought it up right now, we definitely want to build all the tools that make participating in this process useful. So if you're a notary, if you're a client, if you're just a community member who wants to know what's going on, and there are tools and dashboards that you need, we want to give you all the resources to build them. So please go build them. If it's if having a developer grant will help, contact the foundation. If there's something that you would like to see built, but are not able to build it yourself, contact us and we can look at putting together an RFP to have somebody else build those tools. But we want to build the tools that are going to make this useful for you. Okay, and with that, I will give it over to the wonderful Jonathan Doden to talk to us about the Starling project.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you guys should be able to see it. Okay. Can everyone see the screen okay? Awesome. Well, pleasure to meet everyone. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Doden, and I'm the co-founder of the Starling Lab, which is a joint initiative between the USC Shoah Foundation and Stanford. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing at the lab, the incredible data sets that we have, and some of the hopes that we have for storing our data with the Filecoin Plus verified data scheme. So just a little bit of background about the lab. We got started about 2 years ago with our work in developing a framework, and then only this year we're finally at the point in which we're actually launching an address, so to speak, creating a lab, which is going to be a long-term presence on both of the campuses. There are a number of different industry partners that we worked with here, some friends that I already see on the line, and we very much are meant to be engaging with industry. So that's part of my reason to be here, is to reach out and to try to build these partnerships. So to talk briefly about the lab's approach, we follow the signal flow as you capture, store, and then verify information, and use the latest decentralized web protocols to ensure that this process is secure and filled with integrity. And most importantly for our lab, we try to advance the cause of protecting human rights. And so to do that, our end-to-end signal flow is open source. We have a root of trust in hardware, which I'll speak briefly about. And of course, we are decentralized. And so I'll just take you quickly through the process and then talk about the data sets. We begin with something that's just as simple as a mobile phone. And on that, we use the camera that's on board to collect information, but also pair that with metadata, such as network information from let's say a 4G or 5G infrastructure, GPS, the gyroscope, time and date. And we basically, as you take photos, pair that metadata with the image and create that package such that we are able to, sorry, 1 second, there it is. We're able to then hash the image and then sign that package on a secure enclave, which is on the device. And then that finally creates the secure file. And from there, we are able to put a CID on it and create small shards of the file, which we then put out to a distributed network, which includes NGOs and corporates that are helping, universities like ourselves, and then of course individuals. We've pioneered things that can go all the way up from an enterprise server to a Raspberry Pi. So we're really trying to create a diverse network. But why I'm here today to talk to you all is that we also want to turn to the Filecoin community, because we specifically think that things like proofs of space-time and proofs of replication are critical to being able to ensure that the integrity of the files remains. And that has a number of different use cases for us. It can help with encryption and addressability and cryptography. We're able to protect witnesses clarify imagery, and then of course seek justice. And this is very hands-on work. We are working with the leading NGOs in the space and in some cases even prosecutors to try to strengthen things like chain of custody for war crimes trials, and things like the cryptography that we can provide on Filecoin are key to that. So I'll just cover our last little bit, which is to show you how this is not just also behind the under the hood, but this is something that we also present to readers. And so here, if you look at, for instance, this photograph that was taken on Inauguration Day, we worked with Reuters and Adobe to create an interface where you could see the information if you clicked on this little button. And now I'll highlight it for you. You can see the photographer and the date and the location. You could then also see the signature that was provided by, in this case, Reuters. And then there's your CID and your actual link back to IPFS and to Filecoin. So this is very much meant to be a hands-on thing that can allow readers to now get maybe some of their first access points to the decentralized web. To be clear, like what we're doing here is glacial storage with you all. We're not expecting this to be streaming video by any means. But that said, you know, we'll talk a little bit about retrievability and addressability at a later date. But what we can say is there's tremendous demand for just creating this form of encrypted storage. And finally, just to put a bow on it, all that information that you see there in the file that I've mentioned is actually stored and injected directly into the file itself. So all that metadata is paired with the image pixels. So you really get these links back to the decentralized web as a full unit inside of the photograph itself. And in success, we're hoping that platforms like Facebook and Twitter are able to preserve that metadata and not strip it out. So that's part of working with you all, is creating a viable proofs of concept that can convince those types of social media networks to really enhance provenance and integrity of the imagery which is on their systems. Okay, and to wrap up, I just want to give you a little bit of overview of the types of archives that we've got. So the biggest archive we work with is the Visual History Archive, which has the 55,000 plus testimonies of the survivors of genocide. And this was collected over 25 years. There's 9 genocides in the collection and cover everything from the Armenian genocide at the beginning of the century all the way up to current day conflicts in Myanmar as a good example. And there's 9 petabytes worth of data for the uncompressed archive, and there's a little bit less than 1 petabit for the compressed archive. So we're working on finding ways to store that very quickly with Filecoin. For those of you that were in the Minor X program, I thank you so much for your interest. It is all logged. We know who you are and excited to work with you. We've been working with Deep and the team to just find an efficient way to generate CAR files that we can get out to you all. But in any event, this project is very much still on. We've also been working with Reuters, and we have some really exciting new archives that we're putting together with them. Chief among them is the archive we put together called the 78 Days, which you can go to the website of. I can put the link in the chat, which covers the very tumultuous period between the election day and the inauguration day. And that's obviously a huge area of concern for all of us tracking history, and we want to make sure that we preserve what happened during that time. A forthcoming archive is going to be on the Black Lives Matters movement, covering the incredible moment in history in 2020 when people took the streets to march, and making sure that that history is preserved, both for accountability as well as for the inspiration for what that moment meant. And last but not least, we've been working for the last year with Protocol Labs and doing some really cool stuff in the Amazon rainforest. And this began with testimony of indigenous elders in Ecuador, and looking at their challenges in struggles with climate change. This photo series was done by an award-winning photographer who actually used the tech end to end. It's pretty incredible. And we're now going to be augmenting his work this summer and the upcoming wildfire season. And most importantly, we're also taking to the skies. And we have a forthcoming partnership with planet.com where we're going to be able to take years of information they have from their satellite imagery. There's got about a petabyte worth of information that we've been looking at, and preserving basically the effects of climate change from their vantage point. So all really important stuff, and none of it could happen without you and the Filecoin Plus community. So we're really glad to be a part of this and excited to make bridges to you all. Thanks so much. Over to you, Megan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and for sharing the incredible work that you're doing, and really looking forward to the work coming up in the future. Now, I think next we've got Andrew Hill from Textile, who's going to tell us about learnings as a notary. Great build up, Andrew. Now everyone's very excited to hear what you've got to say. You built the drama. Very much looking forward to it.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks. I'm gonna keep this pretty lo-fi and just talk through kind of some of the notary process right now, and then some kind of identified challenges and possible solutions in the pipeline. And I'm gonna start here by just sharing, starting at kind of the basic level for everybody in the room who's already a notary, plus people that want to be notaries, and then people outside that are wondering how this process works. So at Textile, I guess one of the first things to state is, like, at Textile, we've been really focused on the client side of this marketplace and trying to figure out how to get more clients involved with creating data on the network. And so Phil Plus, really interestingly, is really focused on the security of the network, ensuring that people are using the network in a really positive way, and making this resource as valuable as possible as far as storing good data. But the counter to that is that it can add obstacles for people that want to join the network and use it quickly. And so I've kind of put the hat on, like, in this conversation among notaries, of kind of trying to fight a little bit for simplicity and fight for kind of removing some of those barriers here and there. And I think we're getting a lot closer, and Deep and everybody else has been doing some awesome work, and the dashboard, for example, for transparency. But let me just show you where we are today. And I think that there's still challenges here, and I'll point them out. So when people come to Phil Plus, the kind of default pathway is they open the ticket on GitHub, and I'll show you one of the results of those in a second. When tickets are open for me, I actually just jump right into a rubric to score them. I have a set of questions that I ask them that then their responses let me sort of work through this rubric and come up with a score. And I don't need to go into the details of the equation here. This is based actually on another notary, Neo, who did the kind of groundwork to set this up. He shared it. I said, okay, that's awesome. That's the kind of structure that we need to get going. But basically my rubric just works through, for semi-anonymous people sometimes applying for data cap, you can start kind of picking away at, are they from an organization that's known either through social profiles or other activities online? What is their reputation through past projects, both in our community and externally? And then what are their intentions? What are their stated intentions for using the network? Because if they haven't already used data cap, or they don't have an address with storage history, you have to just you kind of have to trust them the first time a bit and just ask them what they're planning to do. So, I ask about their minor distribution and what their use case is going to be, and thinking through, is this just a use case that is tacking on to things that we've already seen before, or is this something new that is really critical to have people experimenting on the network? So there should be some extra leeway there to let them experiment. And then basically I work through all the answers to this rubric, and on the other side, it outputs the amount that sort of I feel comfortable giving them. And then that amount is what I grant them. And actually, overwhelmingly, this rubric has erred on the side of favoring them. And so I think I don't think there's actually a case where somebody passed getting data cap that they didn't get what they wanted. So they also state, like, I want 1 terabyte, or I want 100 terabytes, and the rubric will spit that out, and the levels have matched really well, overwhelmingly. So what does that look like in practice? So here's JV, just to pick on one. he applied for 100 gigabytes, and I think this was using an old version of this was using my old version of the rubric, but he basically worked through each of these questions, gave the answers, and then on the other end, it popped out. We gave him the 100 gigabytes of data cap. Simple as that. So some obvious weaknesses to this. One is a lot of these questions are still fairly subjective. So the external reputation, for example, I have to there's no easy way to just say, okay, this number makes sense. And I think that's the biggest weakness here. But one thing I'd really love to see happen as we want to onboard more notaries into the space, I'd love to see this kind of rubric get sort of reviewed by all the existing notaries and say, okay, what are the best practices here that we could, maybe it's only a subset of this, that we could recommend to all future notaries, that they start there, that they could build their points of view from that starting place. And so this has already been shared on the notaries channels, so happy to share again, but perhaps we could make a small project before we onboard the next batch of notaries to give some guidance on what kind of rubric they could start with. Whether they choose to use that or not is up to them. I know that there's other notaries with other rubrics too, so perhaps we can come up with the right Frankenstein here as a starting place. Right, so some other interesting things, like I started, we also apply for data cap, so textile has projects that we're working through. And one interesting thing that emerges is the difference between my notary, how you judge a company applying versus the project that they're applying for. And so we've had to apply for multiple data caps. That's something that we should expect quite a bit from larger organizations that don't want to mix their private keys among projects. So you don't necessarily want all of your data being created by a single address. So you're going to need to apply for multiple data caps. So how do we deal with that? Like, do we have to make them apply again? Do we split up data caps? Do we have them define different projects? Another thing is the notary that I applied for actually asked, when I applied for a second data cap, they asked, well, how has your first data cap been going? And I thought that was really good. And so I used Reba Sushi's script. If you haven't seen it, I can share it in Zoom to output some stats on my own address. And so this is actually covered in Deep's dashboard now, but I output the stats from my own address and posted them on the original data cap application. I think something like a bot that did this automatically after checkpoints would be pretty amazing way to track the progress of a data cap being deployed. So here's my application for data cap. It was an old one. I applied for 9 terabytes. And so, maybe a month or 3 months later, spitting out the progress on how that data cap has been used would be great for transparency. It would make it easy for the notaries to go and just get the notification and see this unfolding. But I thought that was really good. The other thing is, so Deep mentioned I started building the stats here to spit out how all the notaries were progressing through issues. So basically this time to data cap is really important, and just wanting to kind of start finding where people were getting caught up in the process and try to reduce this to, day or days maximum. Because when you're a new user on Filecoin, it's a really bad user experience if the first thing you have to do is wait weeks to test your idea. And so I think most of this is now covered in the dashboard that's been built. The only thing that maybe is different and interesting is this runs daily now, and it builds up a history of these stats. And so if you ever want to go and do some fun analytics here, you can go check us all and see how we've been progressing through this. And so I'll just leave this running now, and maybe this will become redundant with other places this history is being captured, but it could be an interesting data source for people that want to dig into what's going on. Some other things that I think are really important, 2 things combined. I found that having to review people that were applying for small data caps is sort of pointless. Like, we should just be letting them play on the network. And so we got this approved, which bumped up the glyph data cap deployment to 32 gigabyte, which is, I think, a reasonable amount to start playing. At least they get to fill a sector or send off a few deals. I think it could actually go higher. I think we would be pretty safe going higher. I did the calculation someplace in here, actually. I think I share the calculation that it's like 30,000. You'd have to create 30,000 fake GitHub accounts to get a petabyte of data onto the network with the 32 gigabytes. So you could imagine we could probably like bump that by 10 or 100 and be pretty safe. And so anyway, that's for consideration later. But the really great thing there is that gets people in exploring without having to go through this Fil Plus application process. And then I think the most important piece after that is actually this this FIP, which would allow the top up of data caps. And the reason that's critical is those two things can combine. And so we could actually start letting people start with small data caps and coming up with a process where they can automatically top up based on outputs like this that actually show the distribution of their data across a fair set of miners and that they're using the network in an interesting way. And so those things all really excite me. So hopefully this rubric can get slimmer and slimmer, and we can base it more on these automated processes that are connected more to the economics of Filecoin. With that, I guess those are all my points. So kind of very excited for the future, really want to start a conversation about these rubrics and getting new notaries onboarded and keeping that client sort of experience minimal and short.
Awesome, Andrew. Thanks so much for presenting that. And I think, I think that actually going through like a rubric and seeing how the notaries are thinking about verifying clients, like I think it's incredibly helpful. And so that's awesome. Okay, we're like running incredibly smoothly. We're super on time. I'm gonna jinx it by saying that, but this is great. So to keep us on our wonderfully on-time track, I will introduce Charles from FileSwan, giving a talk about FileSwan and distributing a large volume of deals.
Hi guys, nice to meet you guys again. So today I'm going to present the way how we manage large amount of deals and sending out those deals to lots of miners. So basically, we build a platform which is helping people to download lots of data. Then you can chunk them or merge them to different kind of size of deals. When you have a petabyte of data, it's usually like extremely hard for people to manage them. So what we did is that we first download those data, and then we converted it to a data structure. We create a meta CSV. So with meta CSV, you'll be able to add more rich information about the data IDs, the data payload ID, the timestamp, and all the other infos. So we split the sending process to several steps. Instead of direct sending out, what you can do is that you can first go to website to check how many people are currently available on the network. So in some time, you may be thinking about to find some good reputation miners to send out deals. So we want to check if they have a good history of online. Yeah. So this goes based on your online time and your power growth. So some of them, if you have large time of offline and you are slow, your volume, you maybe have a lower score. And price also a consideration. So in North America, we have lots of miners working with us. And for some miners, you may be not interested because they price too high. And so the problem now we have is that when we say, for example, if we select several miners wanting to send out those deals, can we reuse the same file to send it out? So basically what we do is that we recorded a video like how we doing that. We first we go to the repository we create a zip file or a car file. We can using graphite, GraphSync to generate the car files. Then we package it to one CSV with the program running behind. We'll take the same CSV. When you target the definition of the miners, they will check their price, send out the batch files to them. So inside of which each CSV, you can have one task with several deals. So for example, with the task we have now, we can have 30 deals inside one CSV. So with each of them about 32 gigabyte, you'll be able to send out half a terabyte with one click. And if you want to send it to multi-miners, you just need to change the miner ID. So you'll be able to send out 10 terabytes, 20 terabytes just within a few minutes. And after you send it out, if they also running an agent on their side, you actually can see their selling process from when you start the approach. So which is very critical. You don't want your selling sectors past the deadline, then you become invalid. You also want to sometimes want to check what's the reason behind it. So for example, we have a file which is imported file because we cannot find some information on the local. You can see that with our testing with thousands of deals processed, we actually have not always have 100% success rate. And there's lots of different reasons behind it. Some of them is import have failed because cannot find storage. Some of them is added pieces. So when you want to take a close look of what's happening, you can download the CSV here, and it will give you a way to import to another system, export to other system, or analyze. And yeah, and we also provide API to access, so you can download those CSVs or other informations pragmatically. Yeah, and so for the other things we currently added is in the next version we're going to release next week is the encryption and decryption part. So with the Swan client now, you'll be able to encrypt the data before you send it out. And after that, when you retrieval, after retrieval, you can use the same tool, which will generate a AES key locally for decryption of data. So this is a tool to assist users. For some clients, we have been recently onboarding. They don't want their data widely spread without protection. So there are small companies, they really want those data to be protected. So we just provide them a simple way to provide protect the data. Yeah, that's pretty much it about what we are currently doing. And with the next version, we want to provide more features. And another good news is that, so today we officially signed up to FireSwan as a company. So from today, we're going to, the entire team, we're working as an independent company instead of just the projects. Yeah, thanks everyone. This is just our parts.
Wonderful. That was awesome. Great. Okay, next up we have Maggie Love.
Yes, hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to present a bit on a very simplified overview of the Filecoin Plus user journey. So let me put this into present mode. And so what we did to get this done is we partnered with Huddle and Textile and others in this process to map it out. And we plan on taking this and expanding upon it. So you will see this come out as a Medium post and more. And what we really wanted to do was bring more light and transparency to the Filecoin Plus process to getting that verified data, and also from that get feedback as to how it could be improved and we could get more useful data stored on the Filecoin network. And so really quickly, Huddle is revolutionizing video conferences for remote learning using blockchain and Web3 technology. And Web3 Cloud is building the infrastructure for both the compute and storage layers of the decentralized web. And we are a Filecoin miner. So very simply, to get this data verified for Filecoin, you can go to plus.file.org and hit the landing page. If you have a data cap under 32 gigs, you can, so you click get verified. And then if you have a data cap under 32 gigs, as Andrew was mentioning, you can do automatic verification, which is very short and easy. But if you have more than that, and if this cap isn't raised, you can click on being the general verification button. And so from there, you would search a notary in your region and maybe other criteria as well. You would check the box next to the notary of your choice, and you would click make a request button. So this is making the request to get that data verified. And so you would fill out a data cap allocation request form, and then you would sign in with your GitHub button. And once you do that, you are in the process of being verified, or you are verified. So that's like the first chunk. And so as we expand upon this, we will do both like the automated verification and this general verification. So when you find a miner for your Filecoin Plus storage, you go back to this landing page, you click find a miner button, you search for a miner and criteria, maybe location is important to you, how fast the retrieval is, data center tier. So it has all this criteria listed. And then if you have questions about that miner, you can find their contact info. So you can contact them on Slack or whoever else they have made it available for you to contact them. Some miners are also have like whitelisting, so you would need to contact them before being able to make a deal. So you would select a miner. So Web3 Cloud is a miner, so we listed our miner ID here, and you're going to need to know that miner ID in order to make a deal with them. And so the last part is depending on what your platform you're using, Huddle uses PowerGate. So in PowerGate, you can change the storage configuration. And so what you would do is you'd make sure verified data bool is true. You would add the selected miner ID to trusted miners. So after you went and found that miner ID and they met your criteria, you would add it here. And then PowerGate is ready to publish verified data. And Huddle did put together a little demo video of like what that looks like, uploading your file to Filecoin Plus, but it takes a little bit. So here's just some a little like GIF screenshot of it. And that's it. So it is pretty simple. And I think, as some others are mentioning, what it really is about is continuing to fine tune that process and find where people are dropping off if they have to go through the longer process of getting verified, the general verification, and just making sure they also are aware of all the steps. And so that's really just what we wanted to start crystallizing in a very friendly way. So we plan on also publishing this with Huddle and others on Medium to continue to let people know about it.
Fantastic, Maggie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for working with Huddle to put that together, to help our clients looking to get data cap and to get verified, walking them through how to get that and how to work with the Filecoin Plus program. I think the more users we have who are able to do that, the easier it will be for everybody and the more people we have using the program. That pretty much wraps up our community showcase. Thank you everybody for presenting. This was like a set of really fantastic, wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful projects. And so it is now my time to give yet another plug for the Filecoin Foundation Developer Grant Program. If you are just joining in, this is a program that we run quarterly. And all we really want to do is support the Filecoin Plus community in creating the tools that you want to see. So if you are participating in this community as a notary, as a client, as a root key holder, as any participation in this community, we want to be giving you the tools that you need, and we want to support you. So if you want to go build a tool, getting a grant from the foundation will make that possible. Contact us. We would love to give you a grant. If there's a tool that you want to see, but you are not the right person to build it, contact us. We will see about putting together an RFP to get somebody else to build it. And I would also love to introduce one of the newest members of our team, Sonia John, who is the person who is in charge of our developer grant program. Let's see. Sonia, can we get over to you? We're having a little connectivity issues.
Hi, Megan. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you. And I am excited to be here for this opportunity to work with such a great community of miners and developers and different projects to kind of build out this whole ecosystem. And my role at the foundation will be essentially to use all the resources that we will have available at our disposal to ensure, you know, Filecoin success, miner success, and pretty much everyone who's involved. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with all of you. Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you on the team, Sonia. And to everybody out in the, you know, in the Filecoin Plus community and the Filecoin community as a whole. We want to, you know, we want to help you build the network that you want to see exist in the world. I mean, the thing that's wonderful about the Filecoin community is it's such a set of builders making this dream happen. And I think that's really, truly been demonstrated today with all of the awesome people from the community who presented in the showcase. So now, without further ado, let's get into the most exciting portion of today's activities, which is definitely our notary governance call. And this is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity like Filecoin Plus Day. This is something that happens every 2 weeks. So if you would like to be a part of it, you will have another opportunity in a short little fortnight. Just go to the Filecoin community calendar and you can see where all the notary governance calls are. It will also be 2 weeks from today. Okay, it's kicking over deep.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Megan. I am going to try sharing my screen again and see what happens here. All right.
I mean, I'm still impressed with the screen sharing technology that everyone was able to do today that I was unable to do. Does
this work? Do you see this thing?
Yes.
Okay, there's actually a raised hand. Maybe we just take a quick question. Eric Liu, what's your, do you have a question? Oh, I don't know if we can easily unmute. I don't have the rights to do that. Raquel, we may need your help to promote Eric so that he can unmute and share his question.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, good evening. So sorry, so right now it's midnight in China, so I say good evening. Right, so I'm going to ask a question about the notaries. So is there any plan to increase any notaries or give us the more data caps in China or notaries? So I would like to hear any plan about it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So actually today's notary governance call is going to talk about the next round of notary elections. So I would say hang tight for 20 minutes. I know it's late. Really appreciate you staying for this. If in the case that you are off to bed, then that's also totally acceptable. This is, of course, it's being recorded. But yes, absolutely, there's a plan to have another round of notary elections and increase the amount of data cap in circulation. Great question. Okay, so as Megan mentioned, we're going to kick off our Filecoin Plus notary governance call. This happens every 2 weeks. We wanted to do one at the Filecoin Plus Day specifically, so those of you that are here get to experience like what it looks like and the kind of conversation that we have on a bi-weekly basis. Of course, it's an open sort of call, so any of you, feel free to raise your hand, participate via chat. If you have any thoughts or ideas, feel free to share. We like to do these, like as I mentioned before, at like alternating times. So we don't always keep people awake at midnight at different parts of the world. But today's is at this time slot. So thanks for bearing with us. This is not the usual time slot that we do this call in. the agenda for today's Filecoin Plus notary governance call is to get an update on how data cap is flowing, discuss a couple of open issues, specifically discuss the topic of notary elections, and then have a conversation on any of the topics that are flagged. I'm going to do my best to do this one a little bit quicker. Like I'll try to keep this to roughly about 20-25 minutes. And then for those of you that are hanging around, we have one last talk from the famous ZX on Filecoin Plus as an economic lever for a more useful network. So pretty excited for that as well. So I want to make sure I give him enough space to share some of his ideas. Cool. So data cap flow. There were actually 11 allocations in the last week when I checked yesterday. Very busy week, and roughly 20 in the last 2 weeks through the GitHub repo. That's almost double from the prior 2-week period, resulting in like greater than 50 terabytes of data cap being allocated via GitHub in the last week, which is awesome. 5 new applications came in, and 36 currently open applications for notaries to address are in the repo. That leaves us at the following distribution. So starting out with about 1950 terabytes of data cap to begin with, 1390 of it is still with notaries. 560 of it has now been granted to clients, which represents just shy of 30% of all of the data cap. And from that, about 40% of that has been used by clients in deals with minors. And the current average time to data cap is roughly 4.5 days, almost 5 days. So yeah, that's the latest from Andrew's analysis from the textile side. Here is a quick snippet of last week versus this week in terms of manual tracking of time to data cap through GitHub issues. So you can see here for specific notaries what like the average days to grant is currently looking like. And again, like this is notaries who are like spending their extra time volunteering to serve the network. So we're super grateful for those of you that are there. This is not like an intent to call anybody out. The main thing I want to show here is that we're actually seeing a pretty nice downward trend across the board in how long it takes to get a grant. And that's awesome. Like clients are forever grateful for the time that you're making as a notary to ensure that their needs are met in a minimal friction experience on Filecoin. So thanks for the hard work that you're doing. We're going to continue tracking this as an effort to see ways in which we can optimize and make the experience better. This data should be seen more as like, where is there room to improve the tooling and the experience, both for clients and for notaries to make this process smoother, not as like you're a slow or you're a fast notary. So yeah, if you, as Andrew had also mentioned in his talk, if you have ideas for ways that we can improve the processes and the standards in this program, it would be awesome to have that conversation. Cool. So with that, let's talk a little bit about issues, because there is a lot of interesting, fun stuff to talk about at today's call. For those of you that have been coming to the calls, you also hear me say this like every time, but that's because every notary governance call has some awesome and fun stuff to talk about. It's not my fault that we always have like really interesting things happening in this program. So without further ado, for the following issues, we are making progress on the implementation. So issue 109 was raised to add like an auto close bot to client applications that hadn't had any traction in 20 days. Previously, we were exploring adding this functionality to the Filecoin Plus bot that already exists. We have pivoted away from this and are using a standard GitHub Actions flow now for closing out stale issues. So you should see this starting this week or so. Issues that don't have any traction from clients or notaries in 20 days will automatically be closed out. This will not only clean up stale issues in the repo, but also serve as yet another notification to both notaries and clients to make sure that they are addressing applications that are coming in. If you have any thoughts on that or have any ideas on how we can make that implementation better or tighter, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to share and chat or raise your hand.
$15 seconds.
Sweet. All right. Issue 104 was on the topic of adding like an anticipated response time and throughput for like client applications being sped up. Like in previous calls, we discussed like setting like a goal of being responsive within 3 or 5 days, more or less. And so I had PR'd adding an expectation to the set of objectives and responsibilities for a notary to say that you should try to be responsive within 3 days. Again, this is not like a hard and fast rule, but this is guidance that we have agreed on as a community. This is especially important for those of you that are here to consider joining as a notary, that like we are looking to find people and promote people that are able to be active on the network. And so part of that should also be like responding to clients as fast as possible. So I have a PR open. I didn't get any specific feedback on it. It's very simple. It just adds this verbiage to the set of objectives and expectations. So if anybody sees anything here that doesn't look right or doesn't look good, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably be merging that PR probably tomorrow, because I think it's been open for a couple of weeks for feedback, and so far it looks like people are generally okay with it. I think this one was raised in the last call as well, so I don't anticipate any surprises here. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about some of the topics that require a little bit more discussion. And so for those of you that have been coming to the calls, you're familiar with issue 94. For those that are new here today, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to what it is. The goal here was that there's a lot of projects that exist that are interested in using the Filecoin network that operate at a much larger scale than like what's available in Filecoin Plus, like the world of data cap today. So a good example is like, for example, Jonathan Doden just presented on Starling. They have multiple petabytes of data that could be brought onto Filecoin, and granting them data cap would probably be a really good use case of data cap, because that's a legitimate use case for open, publicly viewable data set that is in some way helping Filecoin deliver on its mission to provide a storage layer for humanity. However, the total amount of data cap that was given to notaries was only like 1.92 petabytes, right? And that's obviously not going to be enough at the scale that we're looking at. And so this was an initial proposal from Julian, who is a notary, as well as Jonathan Victor, around finding a way in which we could create a path for clients that have exceptionally large data sets to like basically start applying for applications independently of the regular notary flow. And so like a client that has this large data set could apply for a large amount of data cap specific to that data set. And the way in which that would be dispensed is through a multi-sig notary, which would be assigned to that client, which would be a set of at least 7 notaries that are signing on to becoming signers on that multi-sig. And there would be like throttles in how quickly that data cap would actually be dispensed, and like a lot of transparency and clarity on how that client is planning to use that data cap. But that would result in a flow whereby we could start supporting much larger data sets through this like new multi-sig notary concept, where existing notaries can participate, and we can start introducing much more data cap sort of liquidity into the system. There are a couple of interesting challenges here. So just briefly walking you through what the flow looks like, and we can talk about some of the changes that I'd like to continue proposing. So the flow today is, we actually have another repo that we just stood up called like Filecoin Plus onboarding large data sets or something of the sort, with the intent that it would be tracked similarly to the client onboarding repo, but it would be different in that it's specifically for these particular kinds of applications. In this repo, a client would submit an application. So in the last governance call, we covered like what that application had and like the complexities of the application. So if you are around, or you were around for that, then check it out. If not, I would also recommend that you take a look at the recording for that call if you're interested in seeing what we discussed on it. But yeah, the flow effectively is that a client would fill out that application template, which is a rather extensive sort of application template, which would be an open application for anybody in the community and any notary to comment on and do due diligence on. And so the intent would be over a 2-week period. We as a community ask all the questions that are required for us to vet this data set and this client as something that we'd like to support in the Filecoin Plus community and ecosystem. And if the community is in agreement and 7 notaries have sort of opted into becoming signers, then we'll kick off the process of creating a multi-sig notary, basically, that like the root key holders will help establish that can serve as like a dedicated like data cap requesting faucet for this particular client. There's also a need to have like a lead notary of a sort to which the issue will be assigned, that will manage like the primary sort of communication with the bot that will help with like assigning data cap to the client as well. That's more of like a figment of interaction on GitHub that some of you who are already notaries are familiar with. But obviously there'll be some like instructions in README for how we can make this work. The implementation team has been doing some pretty good work to make this possible. And so the intent would be that like a client would be able to request data cap from this faucet like as they need it. And the throttles that we had discussed at the previous governance call was that for the first, actually, let me just pull it up because you can still see my screen, which is now here somewhere. Cool. So the throttles that we discussed last time were around having the first allocation being the lesser of 5% of the total data cap requested by that client for that data set, or half of what is expected to be used in a week. The second allocation would be the lesser of 10%, or what is to be used in a week. And then third allocation onwards would be the lesser of 20%, or what could be used in 2 weeks. And the intent here is like for each consequent allocation, a client has already used 90% of the previous allocation. And so we as a community will have like a good amount of visibility into what that client is attempting to do and get enough time to sort of validate that we're like that the client is actually doing what they claim they would, and we're happy to continue supporting them basically in this venture of getting like a large amount of data cap to solve their problems. And so as I mentioned, we have this, it's a private repo right now because we're doing a bunch of testing, but it's part of the project. This has like the brief sort of explanation on what this is and how it works. And so the intent is to get this in a shape that we are in agreement and this becomes public, hopefully in the coming days, so that we can start serving applications. And so I think the things that we need to discuss in order for that to happen are the following. The first is that like we had a great suggestion from Funbushi, the notary from Funbushi, thank you for that, to improve the actual application. So the draft sort of application that was proposed in here will probably have a couple of changes. I've taken the recommendations and think that at least these two should be integrated with the application. So I'll probably update the draft for that. And so thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. If any of you want to take a look at the application as well, please like head over to this issue. I can drop the link in the chat. But yeah, it would be good if let me get this to everyone. Cool. Yeah, it would be good if any of your ideas on like the data we'd like to collect from clients as part of this flow. The second thing would be introducing some more throttles. So if we think of this as like a mini effort or mini program and like an MVP of supporting large data sets, then we should also do this in a way that's safe, and we can set a checkpoint for ourselves to measure, like as a community, our own policies and our own learnings, and make sure that we're doing things in a way that like actually aligns with what we'd expected. And so I was actually going to propose that we do this in a way where we introduce an additional throttle, like one per data set, and then a total throttle for the program. So it's considering adding in, say, like a 5 petabyte limit per data set. So of course, a client could apply multiple times, but at least initially that would give us some amount of control on the rate at which data cap is being dispensed, and like prove out a bunch of these things without like being overly cautious or not cautious enough, effectively, to find the balance. And then adding in like a total throttle of about 50 petabytes, which would allow us to, it would effectively be a forcing function that once like 50 petabytes has been distributed through this process, like we should have a conversation in a notary governance call where we say, you know, here's how we think it went. Did it go well? What are the things that we can improve? What is the feedback that we're receiving from people? And how can we actually improve the process? And so, yeah, that's the second thing. And then the third thing I was going to propose today is that we had previously talked about this already, so this shouldn't be news, but the intent that of those 7 notaries, they should be distributed across like regions. We previously talked about having a notary from every region. I was instead going to propose that of those 7 notaries, they should span at least 3 regions. That's mostly because we don't have notaries in every single region today. I'm also looking at, you know, the continents of South America and Africa. If you've got any notaries that are interested, come on over. But yeah, as an effort to ensure that we're unblocked, I think we should sort of restructure this to span at least 3 regions first. Okay, talked a bunch. At this point is when I usually keep quiet and see if there's any opinions hanging around in the community. If anybody has any thoughts on this, I would love to hear them. Again, feel free to raise your hand or drop something in chat. I'm just going to pull up the chat and see if there's any interesting comments on this particular topic. I don't know if Julian is around. If you have any thoughts as the original creator of this issue, would love to hear them. Megan, if you've got any ideas, would love to hear them as well.
I think this all sounds really great, and I think it's going to be a really useful mechanism for these clients that we know have these super large data sets to have their own process to go through. I think it's going to be a really good client experience.
Cool. So I think the next steps to this one is that I think we should just make that repo like public as we continue to do testing, and it might be good to actually just open up applications, because anyway, we'd built in this construct of having multiple weeks to do due diligence on an application. And so assuming that we're generally on board with this, like I'll probably post these updates to like issue 94, see if there's any reactions in the next 24 or 48 hours, and ping a few of you in the Filecoin Plus channel to make sure we're like on the same page with the people that did have opinions on this in the past. And then based on that, we should probably open up applications. No action needs to happen on those applications other than just communication and due diligence. And so for the first like next 2 weeks, hopefully they'll foster some good conversation. It might also result in us changing the applications and the information that we're collecting. And that's all good stuff as we work together to improve this flow. But yeah, this holds a lot of promise. Like I want to thank Julian and the other community members that have partnered on building this, because this is going to unblock a lot of larger projects from having to go through like the manual flow and having to reach out to multiple notaries, and then also will prevent notaries from running out of data cap as fast as possible, just because they found like a good client to support. Cool. Next up is this new issue that was filed this week by Landsat File 20. I don't know if you are in the room. If you are, can you raise your hand? Because we'd be more than happy to have you talk through it. If not, I can give a quick summary. And for those of you that are watching for the first time, oftentimes what happens here is that somebody has written an issue that they want to discuss and they're at the call, and then they're the ones that drive the discussion. So you don't have to be stuck listening to my voice the entire time.
Okay.
Julian cannot unmute. We need to. That's a good flag. Raquel, can we request if Julian can be allowed to unmute? He might have some thoughts on the prior one as well.
Usually people are not auto muted, though.
Yes.
There are still the awkward silences.
Hello guys, can you hear me?
Talking.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm driving at the same time, so the sound may be not good. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that I think I mean I fully agree with what you just said, and I think it's a very good proposal. I'm just wondering if we should I think we should start with this, and in parallel we should have another issue open for the audit piece, because with these large customers, we will probably have to track and decide which tool we're going to use to track and share how the data cap has been spent, and how we could, because we will be multiple notaries, working on with the same client. I'm just wondering, how we should have a separate one, so how we track and how we audit. We know that we need to dry run some audit because nobody did that before. So maybe this could be the good occasion, but not to slow down the process. I think we should start with this and just open another one for this audit and tracking piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I'll probably write up a new issue based on that, and then Julian, you can put any ideas that you have on that. I have a few in terms of things that we should be auditing, and I think like Fileplus.info itself has become a lot more sophisticated based on the conversation Laura, the presentation that Laura just gave, and then the dashboard that I've been working on as well should help with some of those things. So probably using these in combination plus like new tooling that might need to be built is a good place to start. And that can be an ongoing thing, especially if we're running this more as like a scoped experiment. We probably have an opportunity to run it that way. Yeah, so that makes sense to me. I don't know if there's any other reactions or thoughts to that. One from Reba, which is post auditing, is the data set still public and retrievable by anyone? Yeah, that is a really good point. Part of this is to serve things that are open and retrievable. And so I think part of the audit flow will probably mean like either automated or manual attempts for retrieval. Julian, to your point, it might mean that like the lead notary tries to do a retrieval or find somebody in the community that can do a retrieval like once every week or a couple of weeks. There's also efforts to automate some of these things from different projects, and so we could probably leverage that as well. There's a question from Nelson. Are large data cap clients like Starling being assigned to a specific notary and getting priority for data cap? Great question. So today, the flow is that a client, regardless of their size, would basically pick a notary and then apply to that notary. With this flow, if they're looking for a data cap amount that's greater than 500 PB and less than 5 PB, which is like, massive data set, basically, they would apply directly to the entire pool of notaries. And then the pool of notaries would pick like a subgroup effectively, or like 7 notaries would opt into being signers on a new address that would serve as like the dispensing point for data cap for that specific project. And so in a way, they would be getting priority and have like a specific notary for them, but it wouldn't be like an individual person. It would actually be a multi-sig address on chain. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, Nelson, please feel free to drop another question chat and we can keep talking about it. Okay, I'm going to briefly cover this issue. And for those of you that have thoughts, like please also drop your thoughts in chat or head over to the issue number 119. The suggestion here was having a mechanism of removing data cap from a client and then potentially returning it back to the notary. So this is really interesting. We've talked about this in previous calls as well as a way of having retribution options for like audits and for disputes that are being filed. This proposal came from the Landside file specifically to cover 2 scenarios. One in which a client loses the private keys for their address, so they're not actually able to use their data cap. And then the second, the case in which a client misuses data cap, and so as a result is not like worthy of the trust or using that data cap over time. And so in either case, we'd want to have like a mechanism whereby either at least the data cap is removed from the client, and then in some cases we may want to bring it back to the notary as well, because in the case of like the private keys are lost, for example, you probably want the notary to be able to reallocate that data cap. So I did some digging into the ACTA implementation. It seems like there's no actual easy way to do this, but it can be done. And so if we as a community feel aligned that this is something we want to build out, then it'll probably require FIP and then working with the individual implementation teams, which we've done before and we'll probably do again. And so I would request that if you've got specific thoughts on this, head over to issue 119, drop a comment there. It would be great. With that, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about notary elections. So just so some of you are aware, oh, is there somebody that's going to say something? Cool. So in past notary elections, we had set a target of 3 notaries per region. And in the case that there were ties across notaries, we ended up increasing that for that region. So we ended up in a situation where North America and China had more than 3 notaries, but every other region had only 3 notaries. And then we also had a few notaries who stepped down from the time commitment. And so Europe was left with 2, for example. And so given that and the desire to have both more data cap and more activity and faster responsiveness to clients, I think as a community over the last weeks, we've agreed that like we want to increase the amount of notaries. So in the last call, I had proposed that we do 5, and we had some interesting conversation where I believe it was Emma from the Coda project who mentioned that it's better to anchor around the amount of data cap that we want to give rather than just the number. And I think that was echoed by Andrew and Megan and a couple others as well. And so I did some analysis. I've detailed this analysis in issue 117. Very extensive, lots of tables. If you're interested, please excuse me if I made any mistakes and please feel free to correct me. But the intent here was effectively to say, for the previous round of notary elections, like how is data cap actually allocated and how is it used? So how is it used across regions? How is it actually allocated? And what are the deltas between like how is allocated and how is granted? And so like, for example, like Europe ended up using 17 or receiving 17% of data cap, but only 11% was given to that region. So we probably want to ensure that more data cap is flowing into Europe. But yeah, based on that, I made an assumption that we're probably going to grant at least the amount that we had before. So say that we target like a total amount of 5 PB of data cap with notaries after this election cycle, just as an example. And we want to ensure that, Europe has 20%, the Greater China region has at least 40%, North America has 20%, the rest of Asia also has 10%. And then hopefully we start to see presence in Africa, Oceania, and South America. I've had conversations with people, especially in Oceania, that are interested. So I know that we'll start to build more geographic distribution, which is awesome. But yeah, based on these numbers, if we were to just grab, like, I want you to look at the first 4 columns here. If we were to grab like target data cap availability and look at the current existing data cap, then we get these numbers for like what we'd want to ensure gets allocated in this round of elections. And so based on this, what I propose is that we update the target notary count for North America, Europe, and the Greater China region to 5 notaries. And then we set a max notary count at 7 for any region. And so if the first set of notaries, which is 3 in any other region or 5 in these 3 regions, don't hit the actual like allocation number that we want in this last column, then we add additional notaries up to 7, or in an attempt to like meet this threshold. And in this way, we're both increasing the number of notaries, but not by like an overly substantive amount that the program goes out of control. But we're also ensuring that we get close to making the amount of data cap available that we want in individual regions. Again, I would flag that like clients from different regions have applied to notaries in other regions, and that's also a fine way to go. So this is not like a massive blocker in any way, but having this as a target seems to be something important that the community has voiced over the past few months. And so this is the direction I think we should go in. I would love to hear thoughts from existing notaries that had opinions on this as well before we proceed with next steps. Anyone here have any thoughts? Trying to see if there's anything in chat. Okay. So
okay, hi guys.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay, I'm quite clear about the rules about the data caps. Sorry, for the notaries member. So including for the Greater China. So it means it will be increased another 2 notaries in Greater China. So totally will be 5.
At least, yeah. So at least 5, if not up to 7. Yeah.
Yes, the maximum for the 7. So is there any information about our client would like to allocate it for big data cap? I mean, big, it means more than 100 TB.
So for that, I would refer to the discussion we were having on supporting like the large data sets with issue 94. So maybe what we need to do is discuss like bringing the definition of big down to 100 TB instead of 500. Do you find that there's a lot of clients that are at 100 TB or like at a few hundred TB, but not at 500? Or are most of them looking for more than 500? Okay, 500 sounds good. So for that, we will have this individual flow. And so if a notary qualifies to this round of individual like notary elections, they can participate on the multi-sig that would support that flow. And so for those clients, I would say they should go down this path. And then for clients that need less, like, single digit or double digit tebibytes of data cap, they would go through this set of 5 to 7 notaries. Sounds okay? Cool. Yeah, so I think with that, like, we should probably open up applications. I think that, we've talked about this for a couple of months, and in the last call, it was basically that like the timeline was sort of +1 to say like May 11th onwards, we should open applications. So what that means is for those of you that are interested in being a notary, head over to this repo, open up a new issue and choose new notary application. That already has a template for everything that you need to fill out. You can look at closed applications to see examples of what that looks like. And so this will be like a 4 to 5 week process from here on out to elect like the next round of notaries. I do want to flag that if you're an existing notary and you want more data cap, then you do need to apply again. That was something we decided in a call about a month ago. But if you are an existing notary with data cap and you don't want a new allocation, then you can just continue as you're going. We'll probably take 2 weeks for the initial scoring, and then we'll have results being announced in the following notary governance call. So I'll post like a more official announcement as well in the Filecoin Plus channel, maybe later today. with any other updates based on things that I hear on GitHub or we see in Slack in the next couple of hours. But yeah, I think it's good. We should do this. We should get more stuff. I just want to say any additional thoughts, comments in the last couple of minutes before we hand this over to ZX? Julian? Julian, are you able to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes. So one question, Deep, about what you just said. So if we still have data cap, but just a few, do we have to? Do we have to reapply for this round to get more data cap, or we just have to first finish these the few TVs that we have before applying?
No, I don't think we should block on waiting to finish the 2 TB.
Okay.
That would also create a weird incentive, right? Where like notaries might rush at the door. So I don't think that's the case. I think the only complication that this may create is that because FIP, I believe it was FIP 12 that solved the data cap top-up thing, that still hasn't been released in any of the implementations yet. I think that's intended to go out in June. So if that still hasn't released by the time the next round of notaries need to be confirmed, then all the existing notaries will probably need to get a second address notarized on chain. That's fine. I think that'll be a temporary problem.
Okay, cool. And another thing is, if we have, I'm very happy that we have more notaries, but I think we should ensure that we are all aligned. So do we plan to do like trainings for the notaries, so we just all apply the data caps the same way or something like this?
That's awesome. That's a great idea. I know that Andrew was thinking about this as well in terms of like onboarding notaries a little bit better and more easily. And Neo has some great ideas. Fenbushi has an awesome write-up. Dr. Ann had some good ideas as well. It might be good if in the next notary governance call, we spend some portion of the time discussing like how we want to improve notary onboarding, and maybe we can come up with a set of resources, or we can schedule a future notary governance call, or even like a separate meeting for like all the existing and new notaries to get together and talk about processes. Does that sound reasonable?
I think that sounds totally reasonable.
I'm going to say Julian is in his car, sitting nicely in the wonderful, pretty city of Paris, and very happy to help new notaries on board. Nice. I think we had another question in the chat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How's it going?
Yeah, good. So we got a question about the applying for the new data cap. So we Fenbushi, so we actually had allocated I think 130 like terabyte of data cap, and the total of amount we have is like 1 terabyte, right? So like for right now, we actually want to like apply for more data cap. The reason is that like for some of the clients we have talked about, they actually like want to have like more data cap. So that their like requirement may not be like over 500 terabyte. So their question is from like maybe from 100 terabyte to like 200, 300, which we think will be like so this kind of application for us, we think is too big, because you know like for the previous guideline, like we have been like put on GitHub, so we set the maximum requirement application to be like a 50 terabyte, which is like 5% of the total data allocation. So like if we want to like
I can't find.
Andrew, we may need to request you to mute.
Yeah. So if we want to like approve these some kind of request from like 100 terabyte to 200, 300 terabyte, that would be like too much for us. So like for this new round of application, should we like apply for like more data cap based on though we still have like lots of data cap remaining right now?
That's a really good question. So I would actually ask, like, for these clients that are at like 100 to 200 terabytes, do you think that they could come through this process of like supporting the larger data sets? Like, does that comply here? Like, is it all like open, massive, like publicly retrievable data? Because maybe the answer is that we change the threshold for using the large data set solution instead.
I think most of the cases won't apply for this. So like most of the company we talk about is like listed company. So they still have like lots of consideration on making the public data sets. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, I would say in that case, like the correct path is you should probably apply again. We should probably have a conversation in the next governance call on like what the maximum amount of like data cap we want like outstanding with the notary is. So maybe instead of like another petabyte, we can discuss like if the right path based on what the community feels is like 500 terabytes, something like that. But I think you should apply again, and I think it's worth applying again and having the conversation.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts on notary elections? Andrew, were you meaning to share anything on this front?
Nope, sorry about that.
No worries at all. Perfect. Okay. So I think for now what we should do is we should start taking applications. Of course, like we've got like another governance call where we can discuss items here as well if needed towards the end of the applications in case we need to change anything. And of course, we've got the Phil Plus channels on Slack that we can have this conversation in. And so, yeah, Megan, if you think we're good with this, you can officially now state that the application should be open. And then I think we should wrap up and hand over to ZX. What do you think?
Dear Filecoin Plus community, official notary elections are now open. Please apply.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, with that, I think we, hopefully those of you got to experience sort of your first notary governance call, a little bit of a speed run, lots of fun topics. But yeah, come join us. It's pretty exciting. Lots of interesting things happening. Yeah, with that, over to you, Megan, and then there's ZX.
Over to me? Actually.
Well, I can go over to ZX. That's totally fine. ZX,
yeah, give it to ZX.
Welcome to Phil Plus Day. ZX is here to talk about his session, Filecoin Plus, an economic lever for a useful network. Many of you have already interacted with him as one of the initial ideators behind FIP3, in which Filecoin Plus was established. Thanks for making the time to share your thoughts, ZX.
Great, great, thank you. Can you guys hear me or see my screen?
Yes to both.
Great, let me click on present. Great. Well, I'm super excited for Filecoin Plus Day. I'm very excited for all this like amazing progress that have made as a community. I'm ZX. I work on cryptoeconomics and ecosystem for Filecoin. And today I'm just here to talk about Filecoin Plus and how it is and continue to be an economic lever for a more useful network. Let's start off with some recap. I think like many of us are pretty familiar, but just for people who just joined us today, I think like the Filecoin network is almost 7 months old. Time flies. And then it's now over 5 exabytes of storage. And just to put things into perspective, I think this is like 10,000 copies of Wikipedia, 100 copies of the whole Internet Archive. And many companies took more than a decade to achieve this this scale. So I think we should be really proud of like being part of this community. And recap from Liftoff, I think that was October last year. Jonathan and Victor gave a talk on Filecoin Plus of the motivations, the principles, the mechanisms, and so on and so forth. This is the FIP that first established the principles of the Filecoin Plus. This is how like all these endeavors are being governed by. This is the vision and the goals that we can all get behind as a community. And then we can iterate on the mechanism and the operations at a much more frequent basis. That's what we are doing today during the governance call. And we talk about this in a moment. I think in many ways we are breaking lots of new grounds in terms of institutional economics, crypto governance, and like public infrastructure in general, right? Like people coming together to make decisions for the community, and then many volunteers. Thank you for all the notaries being joining us today. And we see lots of like miners doing BD for the network. I think that's like huge prop to all our ecosystem participants really pushing to make this a reality. And this is a notary governance repo. I think like all of us here, many of us here are very familiar with this. I think we have public talks every 2 weeks. I hope we have Filecoin Plus Days more often, right? Like what about every like quarter or every few months? We should, I guess that's every quarter. Every month we can have Filecoin Plus Day where we really demonstrate and showcase what Filecoin can offer to the bigger ecosystem. And I think when we design like the whole process and the foundation, we drew pretty heavily from the work of Alina Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize in like 2009. Her research really demonstrated that it's possible for a community to come together, and there are many real life examples and cases like that to end tragedy of the commons, right? Like I think for crypto to really become mainstream and successful, I think like we should really be talking about triumph of the commons. And I think we borrow really pretty heavily from lots of the principles and learning that she developed in her research. And here's some stats. I think like we have close to like 1.9 petabyte granted to notaries. I think 10% of that is allocated. Lots of hard work went into this. I think like today's Filecoin Plus Day is a really good demonstration of like the work that we have put in as a community to get to where we are. And I think I'm really excited for all these metrics and workflow that we're getting. We are just going to optimize lots of these things, really improve the onboarding experience of Filecoin Plus. And another dashboard, File.app, I think like as mentioned, I think on Filecoin network itself, there is like close to 14 petabyte of storage being used in storage deals. And I think like the cost of storage is pretty competitive on Filecoin, even more so through Filecoin Plus. Even though my personal opinion has always been like Filecoin, using Filecoin is never just about cost, right? Even cost can be super competitive, but I think like using Filecoin should really about the experience. And then we have lots and lots of companies joining our ecosystem in defining the new experience, right? Like I think like really making the vision of an Airbnb for cloud services come true. Another pretty big moment happened just a month ago. I think like the network crossed the baseline for the very first time. So for people who are not very familiar with this, in terms of token minting through storage mining on Filecoin, there are two components. One is through simple minting, which is like the dominant way of minting in most crypto networks. It has its advantage and disadvantage, but there's also another minting mechanism on Filecoin called baseline minting. It is basically minting based on a network KPI. And the network has defined like pretty aggressive KPIs in the sense that we want to starting from like 2.5 exabyte of storage from day 0 and growing exponentially every year. For the Filecoin network to be minting at its full capacity, we are going to reach like 1 yottabyte of storage in like 20 years. So this is very ambitious. And then when we cross that for the very first time, I think now the minting is at full force. And I think like for our first year target, the network hit that within 6 months. So this is really impressive. Like I think like a huge congrats to the whole community. And we also enter into a new stage in some way, right? Like if you look at the mental model of like the stages of the economy, we are building capacity, demonstrating that like, oh, decentralized distributed storage can work. It's reliable, it could be useful. This is where lots of committed capacity is happening, like to show that like this Filecoin network it's really about useful work. And as like simple minting start to slow down as time progresses and baseline minting start to pick up, I think we are now at this mark where we're starting to transition into the stage 2, right? Like where we start to care a lot more about we have been caring a lot about quality of service, but I think now this marks this transition of like we are competing on both the quality of the service from the point of view of the miner as a provider of the services on the platform, and we also start to drive up due payment as a source of revenue. And I think this is where we are, very exciting. Now we're entering this new phase of like very fast growth in making the network more useful. To just summarize on the recap, I think like decentralized storage at scale as a novel concept is really getting proven with committed capacity, even though there could be some like false impression that it may not be lots of this storage might not be being used, but it's also important to remember it's important to reach a certain scale for the network at a very fast pace, right? It's just not possible through like real data because it takes lots of overhead to make deals, as many of us are aware. And through committed capacity, we demonstrate that it's reliable, it's also useful. And I think like the storage prices are quite competitive today. And then as mentioned, many new companies are joining the ecosystem to make it even better. And this whole Airbnb for cloud services, right? It's not just about storage. We start from storage, but it doesn't end there. There's lots of value-added services that can be provided on top of the storage. And yeah, I think as a decentralized network, the future of our network is really in the hands of the community. So thank you everyone again for coming and really participating in Filecoin Plus. And then with this recap in mind, I think like Filecoin is really unique in the sense that it's well positioned to support both Web2 interactions and Web3 use cases. And taking a step back and thinking about like, I remember during liftoff, there were many discussion about how Filecoin introduced this pretty unique new building block to the whole Web3 ecosystem that could enable a ton of new interactions. Like one big one is like data DAO, data commons, where people come together to preserve information or for a shared common goal. And then we realized actually Filecoin Plus really is one of this kind of first data DAO on the Filecoin network. And there's something special about this data DAO is that DAO stands for this decentralized autonomous organization for people who are not too familiar. What's special about Filecoin Plus really is there is this on-protocol incentive to provide this extra economic boost or lever to making the network more useful. So like just a quick comparison in terms of the sector contents, right? Like sector is a unit of storage on Filecoin. Think of it as like a storage container. You can put different content inside a container. There are three main kinds: committed capacity, regular deals, and Filecoin Plus deals. This means this is meant to be a gradient in the sense that when there's supply with no demand, miners who are both providers of the service on the platform, but also maintainers of the blockchain, just commit capacity to the network, right? And then as demand comes around, they might convert some of that to regular deals. They might take Filecoin Plus deals to earn additional rewards. So as we can see on the reward side, it's 1x and 1x. Everything is normalized to committed capacity at 32 gigabyte sectors. 1x to 1x to not create an incentive for self deals or fake deals. And then 10x for the Filecoin Plus deals. And then deal fees, as mentioned, is an Airbnb for cloud services. So it's really negotiated between like clients and miners. Even though there's some interesting, there's some new FIB, which is in line with the initial vision for committed capacity that we'll touch on in a moment. But for regular deals and Filecoin Plus deals, really depends on the conversation and the negotiation between like clients and miners. So far, the prices that we saw are very competitive. And then because there's deals, you get additional on-chain benefits. There's also an on-chain cost of publishing a message. There is a cost here for regular deals and Filecoin Plus deal, but it's not relevant for committed capacity since there are no deals in it. And then there's also every interaction with the Filecoin network requires some kind of gas. There would always be a gas cost as determined by the demand and supply for using the network. So for every unit of power, quality adjusted power, there's a 1x cost for 32 gigabyte sectors in committed capacity. That cost will be half if the sector size doubles. And then similarly for regular deals, to not create incentive for fake deals. And then if you think about that, given the 10x multiplier, it really is 1/10 for Filecoin Plus deals in the 32 gigabyte sectors. But however, there's also an additional overhead cost, right? Like it takes time to negotiate a deal. Coming to our governance meeting, there's also like different processes that we put in place. So there's some additional time cost, labor costs with like deals and Filecoin Plus deals. So going forward, this is like how we are thinking about this. I think as a community, I think there are lots of efforts in driving down the public storage deals cost because we want more deals on the network, more useful storage. And I think like with like new FIB improvement, technology improvement, we increase the network throughput. That will also drive down the unit power gas cost. Like I think based on some of our analysis that this is the most dominant cost today. So we really hope to drive that down for the whole ecosystem. And then Filecoin Plus as a community, I think like I think we are aware of this. I just want to be a bit more explicit here. Like I think Deep mentioned that as well. As we like put down certain like processes in play, we should also be very cognizant of the cost that we place in making these deals. We want that to be cheap to use without getting abused. And this is hard because like we should talk about in the next slide. I just want to touch on committed capacity real quick. As the name suggests, committed capacity means that you're just committing capacity. It doesn't have to be like random data. It could be like personal data. It could be any data. If as a miner, I want to store something for somebody else for free, I can choose to do that. Then I don't enjoy certain benefits, but I also don't incur some additional costs. The goal here is to create this like different building blocks for emergence of behavior on the Filecoin network. So going back to overhead costs, and the reason why it's difficult or expensive sometimes, I think like really governance is hard, right? Like I think many of us here, we put lots of effort and energy in defining the processes to make collective decision, and also understanding the economy is difficult, right? Like I think there's always grants and interest in seeing more analytics on the network in helping us reduce the cost of governance. And of course, collective management of complex system, basically two of these combined means like hard squared. I feel whenever we're in a moment like this, I think we can always return back to the principles, right? This is why we set up the structure in this way, right? This is the broad set of goals that we want to achieve collectively as a community. And these are our guiding principles in terms of our decision making, right? Decentralization and diversity, both in terms of geographic location and also use cases, because it's a public network with lots of token at stake. So transparency and accountability really matters. And this is where lots of the reputation systems that people are building on really come into the picture. It's governed by the community. And as mentioned, because we want to reduce the cost of governance. So like both in terms of monitoring and dispute resolution should be low cost. Trust is earned over time. And also very importantly, I think like compliance is really a big thing. I think like for blockchain to really go mainstream. And I think like there's always terms of service to protect the interests of like miners, clients, and the network. And at the end of the day, it really is about how can we work together to make the network more useful. And so when we feel like sometimes we have this hard governance problem, it's also quite simple, right? Now that we have the protocol has proven that distributed storage at scale is reliable. So now our question is, how can we better utilize the storage on Filecoin? How can we onboard more and more useful data onto the Filecoin network? And Filecoin Plus, as we saw on the unit economics, really is a lever in our toolbox. And I named this talk as an economic lever. I think there's also a point to make about there could be other DAOs on the Filecoin network, right? Like we could be putting in funds from the other ecosystem as well to support storage on Filecoin. And there could be other new structure that could emerge from this basic building blocks of like a storage container. You can put different content inside there from this kind of primitive. And I think the second point here is, I think it's really important to continue to showcase the power of Filecoin as an Airbnb for cloud services. And I think part of that, this is also part of the goal of today, where we bring everybody together to showcase like what we have accomplished and what we have done and what is possible on Filecoin, right? I really wish, let's say the next time we do a Filecoin Plus Day, we can have more clients come in like and share like different kinds of use cases, different apps, and so on and so forth. That'll be really, really good. And I think like from the protocol's point of view, right, like fast retrieval is possible, encryption is possible, replication is possible. But because we want to build this emergence into the protocol, right, like the protocol doesn't care that much about these other value-added services. So it really needs to emerge and needs to happen with the community. And lastly, I think like going back to the reducing the cost of governance and monitoring, I think like blockchain networks or economic networks in general are evolving like organism, right? Like there are many stages, like similar to the stages of the economy. So like depending on where we are, we can also make pragmatic decisions. We really reduce the governance complex and monitoring complexity, right? One example could be, I think we talked about this before, like if data is public and retrievable, then like that could be like a golden standard, standard for like Filecoin Plus deals, right? Like it's easy for everyone to observe in the community. And lastly, I just want to reinforce, I think like Filecoin is really about win-win and growing the pie of everyone. And this is like something that I think we should take lots of pride in and really like share that with the broader crypto and Web3 and even like other economic network and ecosystem. Great, I think this is just the beginning. I think at Lift Off, we mentioned that I'm very excited to make some history with you guys together. I think it's safe to say that we have already made some history, both in terms of the scale of the network, the collective governance, and the different kinds of incentive that we came up together as a community. And I'm pretty confident that we will continue to make history together, and I'm very proud of being part of the community. Thank you.
That was totally fantastic, ZX. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for like generally all of the brilliant thought that has gone into this program and the economics and the rewards. Okay, so we're just about at time. So we're going to wrap things up unless Deep, do you have any other final words? We'll talk about next steps and then we'll get things closed out.
No, nothing. Just wanted to thank everybody for being here today. Hopefully the first of several Filecoin Plus days. I know, Megan, you mentioned once in a lifetime, but hopefully we have this a few times in our lifetimes. I'm excited to turn this into a thing where maybe one day after the world is in a better place, we could even do this in person, in a few months, years from now. But yeah, it would be awesome to see continued participation in the program. Hopefully more of you are able to participate and share your opinions as the program develops. It's still early. It's an awesome time to get involved and shape the future of how we can empower different stakeholders on the Filecoin network to do the best that they can in making Filecoin as productive a network as possible. So I'm excited to see many of you here. I'm excited to continue seeing many of you in the coming weeks. And in general, thank you, especially to those of you that were part of the community showcase this time. That's a segment that I hope continues to grow substantively in the future. As ZX pointed out, having more client presence would be awesome, but also just great to see all the projects in general. And as long as that continues to grow, that's a wonderful indicator that this network is on track, as ZX said, to continue making history. So thank you so much for being here. The first Filecoin Plus Day, really excited that you were able to make it, and looking forward to seeing you at the next.
And so before we close out, I want to do one final introduction. We have another new member of the Filecoin Foundation team, Dudley Grant, who's our head of security. Dudley, if you're able to unmute and say hi.
Yes, I am.
Oh, yeah,
hi.
Great
Great to be here.
And just wanted to introduce Dudley and then say how excited everyone at the foundation is around the Filecoin Plus program. So you've seen myself, you've seen Dudley, you met Sonia around our dev grants, and Galen, who's going to be joining soon. And so please feel free to reach out to anyone in the foundation around Filecoin Plus. And then, of course, obviously, reach out to Deep, our man of the hour, about how to follow up or what things to do. You can also show up to the next community governance call in 2 weeks. You can check out the Filecoin community calendar for the date for that. We try to vary it on time zone, so it's not always at midnight for people in China. You can apply to be a notary. As of today, our next round of notary elections are open. You can, if you're a client, you can apply to get data cap. You can also, if you're confused about it, follow up and look at Nike Love's amazing user profile of Huddle about how they got their data cap. If you are wanting to get involved in any other way, please reach out. This was wonderful, and I totally agree with ZX and Deep. Excited to do it again. Maybe not a once in a lifetime opportunity. Maybe only the first one's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think with that, goodbye.
See you guys. Thank you.